Hey guys, what's going on? I'll give it just another half minute here to get some more people to kind of join in here. Also, got to make sure that our sound is working. If anything sounds off, just let me know. Make sure I actually have all my stuff lined up here as well. Let's see. Hey guys. Okay, perfect. It does work. All right, sounds good. Let me make another test in the chat to be sure that that's working, and we will fire this off. All right, perfect. So I'll give it another minute or two, but I'm not too sure if this will take the full 3 hours. Obviously, it's going to be a little dependent on what questions you guys have coming in throughout the entirety of this seminar here. But if we end early, we'll end early. If we go overtime, we'll go overtime. If we end right on time, then great. The 3 hours was just a rough guesstimate of how long it took based off of the last one, because that one took 3 hours. But just based off of what I have kind of listed on my screen over here, I don't anticipate this will take us the whole three. But again, if questions come through, we'll play it by ear. I'm trying to think of what stuff's important to announce before we kick things off. Let me think. Well, firstly, you guys saw that there's been new videos coming up and everything. Obviously, we had a new series episode for both the From Feet to Fingertips as well as the Between the Frames playlist, respectively. I will obviously still be doing a stream over those videos, so I will figure out a time that we can go over it, given the fact that I know the Between the Frames playlist is a little bit less sought after in terms of what you guys enjoy listening to in relation to the From Feet to Fingertips playlist. So what I think I'll do is I'll try to squeeze them both in over throughout this week. So I'm thinking probably Wednesday, Thursday night, I'll do a quick live stream over the Between the Frames playlist episode. And then on this upcoming Sunday, we'll go through the From Feet to Fingertips playlist. Hey, Debbie, nice to see you. Glad you're able to tune in. So just to kind of lay out the groundwork of what this next week will look like, we'll obviously have a Quick Tip Tuesday. I'll try to get another series episode out if I can. If not, we'll just see. But worst comes to worst, we'll definitely at least have 2 streams coming up this week over those 2 different playlists consecutively. I actually just got back from a little vacation myself. I got to get into some of the hot weather down south. So that was a good time. So I'm really glad to be back home and be hopping back into all this stuff again. I saw a handful of you guys reached out to me. I got like 4 or 5 more emails that came in over the course of just a handful of days. So please, guys, I'm going to say it every time. I'm never going to stop saying it because it means that much to me. But please continue feeling comfortable and reaching out to me. Feel comfortable going onto the website, reading up on some things, looking up some things, ask me questions, send me videos, whatever. Guys, I do not anticipate at any point in the near future, if at all ever charging for the services I'm providing here. And with that being said, the best way you guys can see the best benefit from this free content I'm laying out is to actually take advantage of it. I know I'm the same way. I know some of us are more vocal than others, and we like to speak to people or chat or whatever. I'm not a big talker whenever I watch other content. I call it the silent viewer. I'll just kind of watch people and listen and kind of write down some of my own thoughts. But I'm not a big comment person. So if you're one of those people, which most of you are, I promise you guys, I totally get it. But I'm telling all of you from the bottom of my heart, this is a free service, and not a lot of people are offering this kind of stuff, which is why I am offering it. I'm going to remain available. Another cool thing I'll announce, and then we'll kind of start to dive into things here. For those of you guys who know, I do have a baseline coaching license from the United States Bowling Congress, but I recently got to sign up for, so long as they have enough people that will attend it, a coaching license that's a step up from where I'm at now. So I'll get to actually go out to this different training facility and get to listen to some of these higher level coaches speak to me and train me on some new things. And then I'll get a higher level of certification so that I can increase the quality of content that I'm giving all of you guys, because all of you guys know, right? Some of you guys have known what my upbringing was with bowling and everything. I want to keep continuing to grow, and I promise that I'm committed to ensuring that I'm giving the best and most accurate, most up-to-date, and just overall best quality of content and information that's possible. So I promise, guys, I'm reinvesting as much time as possible in allowing myself to gain more knowledge to then spread that out to all of you. But other than that, I believe that's all I got. So I made this if I could find my mouse, that would help. This very kind of loose kind of script for what we're going to be covering today. So I know it's been a while since I posted about the Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments playlist. I want to say it's been, oh my gosh, guys, like half a year, something like that. It's been a while. And I like these seminars because this gives us a chance to kind of take a step back to where we were 6 months ago and kind of think about some of the stuff I was discussing and kind of refresh us into some things, especially since that I know many of us have league seasons either in the beginning of them or are going to be beginning them soon, I think it's important that we talk about some of this information. I want to thank you for your information, brother. You've been a big help. Absolutely, Johnny. I'm glad I've been able to help you. I appreciate you. I don't know if you were the ones that reached out, but there was someone named John. So I promise I will get to your email if it was you. But I'm glad I've been able to help. Absolutely. It means a lot. That's why we do it. But I think this is a lovely space for us to revisit topics, ask questions, because that's what the big purpose of these live streams and seminars are, and just kind of refresh our minds as we kind of roll into the season. So for those of you who do kind of remember a little bit of what that Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments playlist talks about, it kind of talks about some of the nuances with some of this equipment that we talk about, as well as some of the basic adjusting characteristics that we should learn to apply in what we're used to bowling on. Now, throughout the entirety of this seminar, I anticipate we'll be talking mostly about your typical house shot, because most of those of you who tune into me are league bowlers, and some of you are on the more amateur or the intermediate side and the tournament bowlers. Now, we'll cover into some of those more advanced oil patterns a little bit, but I'd rather discuss what we're more commonly going to be battling up against. That's just what you find in league, which is a house shot. In addition to that, I'm sure many of you may kind of come to realize with that, given that we're talking about adjusting and lane play and this mindset and these different kind of things to think about, a lot of this stuff is actually going to kind of have a decent amount of overlap to some of the other playlists, most specifically the Pathway of Learning playlist. Given that that Pathway of Learning is kind of like the overarching like tree of the channel, all these other series are kind of little saplings that are coming off of said tree to include the Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments playlist. So if you guys are hearing things that may sound somewhat redundant, or it may sound like I'm just re-dipping into the Pathway of Learning, is because a concept that I discussed in one of these Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments playlist videos ultimately is a sapling of one of those bigger bread and butter videos that came from the Pathway of Learning. So I just wanted to kind of lay out the groundwork. And again, I have some things I plan on showing on my screen here as we kind of dive into this, but if you guys have more questions, you want me to look more things up, we'll look it up. So for starters, let me move this over here. I believe that would be beneficial for everybody's sake. I'm going to move this here, move the chat. Oh, that might help. All right. So in the very first episode, I began to discuss understanding what your bowling ball's potential is. And not only your bowling ball, but just what the world of equipment is trying its best to provide you with. And for those of you who are very big on bowling equipment, know that there's so many things that go into every little piece of equipment. You got all these different technology hidden within and on the outside of your bowling ball. You have different shoes that have different interchangeable soles for different purposes. You have all these things you can apply onto your hand, your bowling ball, your shoe, whatever. You can apply onto virtually anything. And all this stuff has a play in your capabilities as a bowler, and understanding not only what these things are, but also how to leverage them to allow you to be more successful, are what's going to be a whole lot more important and allow you to improve your average and actually make out with what that equipment is trying its best to provide you with. So for starters, I like to say that there's these three sort of, I guess, categories of equipment that you can kind of use when you're lumping together things that you have or things you'd like to have that you should kind of research on and understand. Also, if you guys see me drinking a lot of Coke, it's because my voice is a little shot. I don't know what happened over this past week, but I'm trying my best to keep my voice lubricated. And just bear with me. I promise. I got two of them. I had an extra one on the side so I can refill. um, so there are three key sort of buckets of equipment. So the first one and the most common one is going to be right your ball, your bowling ball, and there are so many things we could talk about bowling balls. And this is kind of branching off. I know I'm kind of going off topic again, but I still think it's an important disclaimer. You guys know that I'm a bowling coach. However, I am not a pro shop operator. I'm not going to go into some of the very deep concepts within the bowling ball world for two reasons. One, because I'm not very well educated and don't want to give you guys the wrong information. And two, it's just going to make things extremely complicated if I was to do that, even if I do know a lot about some of the more intricate information. So again, we're just scraping the surface on some of the pro shop operator things and going a lot deeper in the things I am way, way more confident in, which would be the adjusting characteristics and applying some of these baseline things that we're going to learn about the equipment. So the first one's going to be your bowling ball, right? What are the things that make up your bowling ball? How do you know which bowling ball is right for you? And better yet, if you already have a bowling ball or a handful, what should I be purchasing next? That's going to this whole seminar is going to answer that question for you. The other one is wearables. What are some things that you can wear? There are things that the common one's going to be your shoes, right? But you can put things on your wrist. You can put things on your thumb. You can put things on your arms. There are a bunch of different things that go into that that can change how your physical game is. You'll find more commonly in these wearables that these are meant to tailor more toward the physical game, while the bowling ball and the things that the last category kind of play into how that bowling ball is traveling down the lane. The last category, and it's kind of a funky word, but it's the best I got, is appliables. Things that you can apply onto your bowling ball, things that you can apply onto your wearables. What are these things that you're applying going to change within that piece of equipment, right? We all know that you can have different things that you can apply onto your shoes to make yourself slide less or slide more. Some of you may not slide at all. Some of you may be applying some things onto your bowling ball, whether it be putting things in the thumb hole to either have your finger come out, your thumb come out easier or harder accordingly. You can even put things on the outside of the bowling ball to either make that surface sandier or shinier to make the bowling ball read sooner or later, respectively. And even things that you can put on your forearm that may help with injuries and other such things like different types of tape. All this different stuff is meant to have a benefit. And I'm not going to go too deep into every single little piece of equipment because there's so much out there. But again, while I'm speaking, I would like for all of you guys to just basically think and ask questions on what is something that I've been looking at that I could either purchase a bowling ball with, wear on myself, or apply on myself, and how will that impact me? And if you guys want a more in-depth answer, I'll give it to you, but please ask it in the chat accordingly. So, all right, bowling balls. Those of you who have not been around for very long are in for a world of information. And those of you who have been around for a little while in terms of the bowling world know that it is so complicated. If any of you guys have gone to a pro shop and asked the pro shop operator, this is what I'm looking for, whatever, they're going to throw out words at you, terms at you, acronyms at you that you probably aren't even sure you know. But you're just kind of like, I'm just going to trust him or her to kind of give me the thing I'm looking for. And we've all been there. I'm still there on some things myself, I promise. All of us have been there or are there now. But I don't want to go into all these intricate things because that's not what I'm paid to do, and I'm not paid to do at all. But I'm rather going to give you guys the basic outline of it and what you guys should know in a basic level before you go into that pro shop, so you don't sound completely lost to the pro shop operator, and so you can kind of guide them on what exactly it is that you're looking for. Now, I have my whole bowling ball rack behind me, and I could certainly flip the camera around and kind of show you guys it over there. You guys may be able to kind of see it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. There it is. You guys can kind of see the bowling balls kind of sitting up there on that rack. Got like 3 on the top. I got some on the bottom, so on and so forth. So, I mean, that's pretty cool, right? I guess. You got some different equipment and stuff. And many of us, especially if we don't know much about the equipment, can kind of look at that and think, oh, it's just different colors, right? I want the pink bowling ball because I like pink, or I want the blue bowling ball because I like blue, or I want the gray bowl, whatever the case may be. But there are things that's just one thing that we can see is the color. But what makes these bowling balls unique and like no other is the hidden technology that is found inside of these bowling balls. So I'm just going to kind of pull up something here just to kind of show you guys something. So right here, I'm on bowlersmart.com. This is a big bowling website that many bowlers who I've spoke to commonly like to purchase their equipment and bowling balls from. And just to kind of show you guys just the realm and the world of all these different things, I mean, you guys can see within this symmetrical ball and asymmetrical ball picture, it has like cutouts in the bowling ball. And even when I hover over these, notice how the inside of these all have a different kind of shape and a different kind of look. Well, that's the hidden technology that many of us don't even know actually exists, which is insane. And how these insides of these bowling balls are made up change that shape or the motion or the way the bowling ball likes to react as it's traveling down the lane. I said Coverstock matter, I realized, yes, Coverstocks do. We will cover that, I think, in one of the later episodes I cover Coverstocks. Okay, the next one. So in this first one, Johnny, I cover RG and differential, and then we'll go into the Coverstocks. So I'll be able to dive into that. So I got you. No worries. But, and like looking at these, if we're just looking at this without me hovering over it, I mean, you can see you got different colors. You got blue, some pink and gray, and the outsides do matter as well. But the inside is just something that, for many of us who don't know much about bowling balls or haven't even seen this yet, it's just a big shocker. I know I taught a very young group of students before I coached my high schoolers that I coached for a year there, and they were most of them were brand new to bowling, and they all were like, oh, I want this color ball, or I want this color, whatever, because it looks cool. And I told them, that's awesome, that's great, but what if I showed you something even crazier? And I legit did exactly what I'm doing to you guys here. I just went on here, just hovered over, and they're like, Coach Logan, what is that like brick or and ball and crap in the middle? And I'm like, that's stuff that's changing how that ball's reacting. And they kind of were like, so you're telling me they don't just look cool and don't look different? I'm like, no, there is a whole science behind all these, and people get paid big bucks to study it. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show that very, very briefly here. So in essence, what I'm saying is all these bowling balls, like us, have a DNA that they're built with. And it's important to understand that because we have to know what we're buying. And better yet, we have to cater what we're buying to how we bowl. If I have a bowling ball and if Johnny has a bowling ball, the same exact ball, we change nothing about it, and we both threw it, I am telling you with almost 100% certainty that that bowling ball is going to look different with how it's traveling down the lane when I throw it compared to how Johnny throws it. There is almost 100% chance. And Debbie is left-handed. Johnny, I don't know if you're right or left-handed, but Debbie's doesn't even throw it with the same hand. So we know it'll certainly look different for Debbie, right? We all have our bowler's DNA. All of these bowling balls have their own DNA as well. And you have to kind of mold that your bowling DNA to your ball's bowling DNA. I know that sounds really confusing, but there are some metrics that all of you guys can look up. There are two key metrics, which there's a third one, which we'll talk about later on. But there are two numbers that you guys can look at when you're just like looking at things online that can kind of at least give you a little bit of an idea as to what the navigation aspects of that bowling ball are going to look like. You have two metrics. You have the RG and the diff, or differential, diff for short. In essence, these two numbers categorize two things. The RG categorizes how long or early that ball likes to see friction and hook or change direction or whatever you guys like to call it, while the differential is the overall potential that bowling ball has to hook. So you're probably like, okay, Coach Logan, great. Thanks for giving me a basic, but how do I know what the numbers mean? Okay, I have a little cheat sheet here within this little thing that I wrote up. So RG, this number changes how the weight is distributed throughout that bowling ball. With a low RG bowling ball, the weight is packed closer to the center of the bowling ball versus a higher RG bowling ball, the weight is distributed toward the shell or the outer of that bowling ball. I always like to say, to kind of put some sense into this, I'm not sure how many of you either can think back of when you were in this high school class or can think of when you just had this high school class, depending on how old you are. Do any of you guys remember hearing that problem with a ballerina and there'd be a teacher or someone and they'd stand on something and they'd spin in a circle and they'd either stick their arms out away from their body or bring their arms into their body? If you guys remember it at all, you guys remember when the professor or whomever would stick their arms out, they would not spin as fast because their gravity is more concentrated away from the center of their body. Versus when they would tuck their arms in, they'd spin faster because the gravity is more concentrated. That RG number is meant to tell you whether you're the closed arm ballerina, low RG, or the open arm ballerina, high RG. That's basically what it's trying to tell you. So for the numbers for RG, the number of 2.5, if it has a 2.5 or is lower than that, so 2.49, 2.3, 2 point whatever, that is considered to be a very low RG bowling ball, or is going to be, as we like to refer to in the bowling world, a strong bowling ball. These bowling balls are going to tend to want to read the lane sooner. For those of you guys who have been tuned into the pathway of learning, you know we don't want to see the lane from left to right. That's not how we want to view it because the lane isn't that wide. The lane is very deep. It's very long. If a bowling ball hooks sooner, if you're someone who views the lane from left to right, think of the ball wants to hook more. Because logically, if the ball wants to read the lane at a sooner point, that means it's going to see that change in direction sooner, thus meaning change more in the direction that it changed into, right? Something in the middle in terms of RG will be a 2.51 to a 2.53. That's something in the middle. So that mid lane kind of read. If it is a 2.53 or higher, anything higher than that, that is considered to be a very high RG bowling ball, and it is going to have a very weak reaction. Those are the bowling balls. If you guys go into a pro shop and you're like, I want something that snaps off the back end or looks like a hockey stick, that's the RG number that you're looking for, is 2.53 or greater. So that's what RG is. Differential is the other metric. And without me making this extremely, because guys, this one is very, very confusing to explain. In the simplest terms, the higher this number is, the higher the overall hook potential is. We'll talk a little bit more about this concept later, but there's this concept of precession within a bowling ball, and it's essentially a gyrating process. For you guys know about gyros, they're trying their best to stabilize themselves. Or think of, if you take a bottle, if you take like one of those like little spinny things that you'd spin on the ground, what are those things called? Like those top spinner things, toy. Yeah, these things. These things. If you guys think of these things when you guys would spin them and they'd spin and they would stay upright, and if you tried to push them or something, they wouldn't want to bend. It's trying to reach an equalizing state like that. That's basically what your bowling ball is trying to do. But it's not starting in this position. It's starting in this position here based off of how you release the bowling ball. But what it's trying to do is reach equilibrium by standing upright like this once it's spinning. Very weird concept, but that's essentially, in the simplest terms, what that bowling ball is trying to do. And in doing so, the bowling ball flares. This is a good one. Bowling ball flare. Let's look at some bowling ball flare, guys. Here we go. So in doing this, your bowling ball is trying to flare. So if we look at this image right over here, this is the photo I want. You can even see the different differentials. So this is perfect. I'm just going to keep it here. It's a very old picture. But if you guys notice, you see how these oil lines on this left one are very concentrated? They're very in a similar spot. And as this RG number, or this, I don't know why it says RG differential, but whatever. But as this number gets bigger, you see how these oil lines start to slowly space themselves out? And you see how on this one on the far right, this one is very far out. You can see the distance between the oil lines is what, like, I can't give you a measurement. It's so small. And over here, it's very wide. That's what that differential number is doing. The reason why this alters the hook potential is, all right, let's look at this. Let's look at this bowling ball on the left-hand side. I have this bowling ball on the left-hand side. Every time it's spinning, it's rolling over a very similar spot that it rolled over before. In other words, these balls are soaking up oil every time they spin and see a revolution on the lane. Every time that this ball spins, it's not only rolling over the oil that's already applied on the lane, but it's almost re-rolling over the oil that the ball's soaked up. So what does that mean? The ball's not going to hook as much because it's seeing less friction overall, versus a high differential bowling ball is seeing a different portion of the surface of that ball every time it rotates. Therefore, it's not hitting over oil that it previously hit on before, meaning it's going to see friction a lot sooner and see more friction just overall, right? So this is what causes that. This is what that differential number is trying to tell you, is what will that process of precession look like, and how aggressive is that going to make these oil lines be kept away from each other? If you're thinking of a number to categorize how much will depict, a lot of hook potential or not a lot, the number is very low. If it's if it's just 0 to 0.03, that is a low differential bowling ball, meaning it's going to look like that picture on the left where the oil lines are very concentrated. Something like that picture in the middle will be from 0.031 to 0.045. This is something kind of in the middle, kind of like that picture in the middle. And if you want something that sees a lot of friction and does a lot with it, like that one on the right, if it is 0.046 to 0.060, or anything more than that, basically. Anything more than 0.045 is going to be a very high differential bowling ball. Now, these numbers are kind of telling a basic story about this bowling ball, or identifying the baseline DNA of that bowling ball. Wait, so as you said, everyone rolls different, but if I have a low RG ball, which it started sooner, am I playing more across lane or more inside? Low RG bowling ball. A low RG bowling ball means it's going to be strong, aka it's going to read the lane sooner. If the bowling ball wants to read the lane sooner, that likely means it's going to have an easier time hooking, depending on what the differential number is. Accordingly, that's likely going to mean you're going to have to play the lane a little bit deeper than that of what you're normally used to because of the fact that it's going to see friction at a sooner point in time. Or a high, if it's a high, it's the opposite. That's going to tend to read the lane later on, meaning you can generally play a little bit straighter than that of a lower RG bowling ball. But good question. So, in other words, guys, how these two numbers relate tell the basic story of that bowling ball. In other words, yeah, you're correct. Yep, you got it, Johnny. Perfect. So that's critical because now you're not going into the pro shop entirely blind. You kind of know what kind of shape do I want and what kind of shape can I basically expect this bowling ball to make. And again, because of the fact, which I'll talk about later on, that we all throw the ball differently, the balls are not going to behave exactly like how they are if I threw it versus if you threw it. Ooh, excuse me, let me get another drink. So again, it's not a give all, be all, perfect metric, but again, it at least gets you in the ballpark of what you're looking for. This is a very common pitfall that I very commonly see. And this one really makes me upset because I really wish more bowlers heard this sooner. If you own a bowling ball, or if you own a couple, or whatever, right? And you're thinking you want a new bowling ball, don't purchase something that has similar DNA to a bowling ball you already have. The whole purpose of purchasing different bowling balls and creating an arsenal, as I like to refer to it as, is so you have different types of balls that are meant for different types of things. If you bowl one week, if those of you even in league, you may experience this. On some weeks, a bowling ball you're throwing may read the lane perfect. On some weeks, it just may not. The oil may be laid out a little bit differently, or whatever the case may be, or whoever you're bowling against may alter how that lane is transitioning. And one bowling ball can go from the best looking thing in the world to absolute garbage the next week. If you go to a pro shop and basically buy the same exact bowling ball, but just different colored, you're just wasting your money. You want to get something that's different. A way I like to think of this is golfing. You never see a golfer swing the exact same club for every single time that they hit a golf ball. The reason for that is because every club is meant to serve a certain purpose. The driver is meant to get them out of the tee box and send the ball flying. The putter is meant to be the thing you use on the green to hit the ball short distances, and the irons and wedges with in between. When have you guys ever seen a professional putt with a driver? It's just not a thing because they know that club is not meant to accomplish that task. Bowling balls are like clubs. We don't want to purchase 18 drivers and then the one time a driver doesn't look good, it's useless. All 18 of those balls are useless. Diversify your bag by getting different clubs or by getting different things that serve different purposes within your bowling ball bag. So a very simple thing that all of you guys can do, and I'll go back over here to my little screen here. I'm so glad we got this streaming service. This is so sweet. I love that we have this at our disposal now. So, I mean, if I'm just looking at, let's just look at this IQ Tour Sapphire. So again, I'm just on a website. And they actually have a good deal on it. That's actually pretty nice, guys. If you guys are looking, they actually have a lot of deals. But they probably do that to make it look good. But anyway, if I'm looking at this one, I just kind of scroll down and look at some of the stuff in it. I mean, I can see everything. I can see what the core is they've applied to it. Here they are. Here's your specs. Radius of gyration, or your RG, and your differential / your diff. And depending on what weight you throw, they're going to be different. Why is that going to be different? Because the cores are going to have to be changed to fit the weight that you're purchasing. If I can't stick this big of a core in a 5-pound bowling ball because then the ball is not going to weigh 5 pounds. So I have to change something about this core accordingly to make the ball fit the weight that I'm purchasing. So because of the fact that that hidden technology is changing based off of your weight, your RG and differential numbers are going to change accordingly. Look at this. This website even tells you like what it's good for. League bowlers. It shows you like, yeah, the different styles, high rev, where it fits, adjustments. You can see all this stuff. Yeah, here's all the different specs. Here's the flare that we're talking about. There's the color. There's the cover stock, which we'll talk about here pretty soon, Johnny. You can see what the lane conditions are best for. We'll talk about the cores again a little bit. Came out this month of this year. You see people are reviewing. I mean, like, guys, this stuff is so neat, and this saves you so much time because now you're not going into these pro shops completely guessing on things because you at least have a little bit of the picture painted before you even go in there. And guys, they do this on every bowling ball, every single one. You can see all these different metrics. It's super, super useful. So I mean, if I'm a person who purchases a 15-pound ball, for example, if I'm looking at this, what is this trying to kind of tell me? Well, my radius of gyration, or my RG, is at a 2.49. This is going to be a generally overall a little bit stronger bowling ball. And you can see that my differential is in that middle. Maybe, I guess it's a little bit low, a little bit lower. So it's not a lot of hook potential, and it's going to read soon. So it's going to have a little bit more of a clean look, more of a control piece. And again, guys, this ball literally just came out. I don't own one. I've never thrown it a day in my life. But I bet you if we kind of watch a video on somebody throwing it, I bet you overall it'll have a pretty clean look to it. Oops, get me back to here. Perfect. So that kind of stuff is extremely useful. Now, what I would like for all of you to do, just spend some time. You guys don't have to go do anything too crazy. I should just keep this on this page. I don't know why I keep tabbing it away. Let's go back to my stuff. So there's a bunch of websites all out there. Here we go. This is a pretty cool tool. Bowling ball comparison. Whatever equipment you guys have, if it's 1 ball, 5 balls, 500 balls, whatever, just try to chart out what you know about your ball's DNAs. So this one is a very useful tool, completely free. Just Google it up. If I look up, what ball are we just looking at, guys? This Storm IQ Tour Sapphire. They may not have it on here yet since it's so new. Let's just get IQ Tour. We'll get a purple hammer. Or maybe, what do they call it? Urethane. Let's just look up something else. Let's just do a 900 global ball. Let's say I have these 2 balls. Look at that, guys. Tells me what the names are. It compares them. It shows me what the covers are like. It shows me what my RGs are, what my differentials are, all this stuff. Completely free. I can now compare all my balls. And if you are creative or think you could spend just a little bit of time, I did this in about 2 minutes. I just grabbed some balls, mapped out what their specs were, and kind of built a chart out. Now, this chart tells me what these balls are meant for. It tells me what they do. I put the RG, the earlier to later roll. I put the differential, the higher hook potentials. And I mean, you guys can see where these balls lie. This is something that has an early roll and doesn't hook a lot. Even earlier roll hooks even less. A later roll, but hooks the same amount as this one. And this one is just overall just more aggressive altogether. Now, I mean, once you guys have a warm and fuzzy on just these 2 metrics, you'll come to realize just how useful these things are at just mapping this out. Because by seeing this gives you a better idea of what you should be buying and what are the missing pieces. If this was my arsenal, I'm clearly missing something in this bottom hand corner. I need something that has a later roll but doesn't hook as much, just a weaker piece overall. I guess you could say I'm also missing something way, way, way over here. But this is awesome, right? This to me is very, 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 very useful. But it's only useful if you understand what those metrics are. So again, that is the key takeaway information for that first episode of that series. So let's keep on rolling here. Do we have any questions come through? I kind of looked away from the chat. Okay, we are good. So that's the basics of that first episode I covered. So let's go on to the next episode I covered in that series, which would be cover stocks and what these cover stocks mean. So we just talked a lot about, the influences as to what makes up the RG and differential of a bowling ball. And there is another thing that makes up on that number that isn't just the hidden technology on the inside, but rather what's on the outside, what the outside looks like. We like to refer to that as the cover stock, or what is the finish that's applied to the surface of that bowling ball that changes how it responds when it sees friction or oil accordingly. There's 5, I guess, big blankets of these different cover stocks that you guys will commonly see when you're researching things that have a play onto those RG and differential numbers. But what's cool is you can change the surface of your bowling ball, but you cannot change the core of your bowling ball. The core comes how it comes out of the factory. Unless you do some super cool surgery on your bowling ball and can gut it and change it, you're not going to be able to change the core of that bowling ball, but you can change the surface with some of those pliables that we talked about. All right, so let's dive into this. So the most common cover stock within bowling today is what we like to call reactive resin, or as many people say, just a reactive bowling ball. Reactive bowling balls have this super cool thing within the surface, and it has this it acts like a miniature sponge, basically. So when you guys looked at those photos, you guys can see that those bowling balls were picking up that oil and soaking it into itself. Those are, although an old photo, are that reactive resin cover stock. When these bowling balls see the lane and they begin to see some of that friction and they get some heat from you rolling them, the surface is porous. And these little micro sponges that we can't see with our naked eye on that bowling ball open up and allow that oil to go into itself and soak it up, which gives it that reactive look that we're looking for. Most of these reactive bowling balls are meant to respond more aggressively when they see the friction. Whether that be earlier or later is dependent on the three different types of reactive resin cover stocks, but they're meant to respond to that friction, which for those of you who have been around bowling for decades and dozens of years know that the bowling world in terms of technology as well as the oil has changed. When bowling came out all them years ago, oil wasn't meant to be a thing that changed the manner in which bowlers played, but rather it was just a means of protecting that at the time strictly wood surface that was placed out on the lanes. And the oil kind of built them up and allowed these balls to hit them with a little bit more force, not do anything. But once bowlers started to kind of evolve and learn that there's a science and there's a technological aspect behind the sport, and they began to apply some rotation and revolutions. To put it simply, the bowling balls back then, because of all this and because the oil wasn't nearly as much as what it is today, bowlers found it very hard to kind of control how these balls were navigating on the lane. So it was kind of like a push and pull. The centers would put more oil on the lane, and ball manufacturers would come up with more aggressive balls. So how would these people respond? They put more oil on the lane. They'd get more aggressive balls. They put more oil on the lane. And this process just kind of rinsed and repeated until now oil patterns are a massive thing that impact today's sport. And I'm sure all of you guys have seen some of those different oil patterns and know that the professionals aren't bowling on stuff that's meant to be forgiving. They're bowling on stuff that's meant to be grueling. 50, 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't even a forgiving house shot because that wasn't the thing. It was just oil that was applied to protect the lane surface. But now it's become a massive part of play. And because of that, these reactant resin cover stocks are so successful, and they're only going to continue to get more successful. So within the realm of reactive resin cover stocks, there are three different blankets. I might be able to find it. I want to find some photos for you guys. Let's see. I want to find a good photo. This one kind of does it justice. You can kind of tell. This one will work. I'll pull this one up for now. Let's see what we can do here, guys. Flip this back on. All right. Not the best photo. It's a little bit crappy, but you guys can kind of tell. So these three on the bottom are the three different types of reactive resin cover stocks. From left to right, you will see the latest, or most commonly the higher RG balls, and then they slowly get lower and lower. Pearl is the shiniest of all the cover stocks that they have within the reactive resin. And I'll know this photo doesn't do it the most justice. I'm sure you guys can tell this one definitely looks pretty shiny. You can see that the light from whoever took this photo is kind of glistening off the bowling ball. That's a pearl surface. These ones, because they don't have much grittiness to them, they tend to respond late as possible. They're going to wait until at the cutoff of the oil within the house shot or just before the cutoff of the oil with the house shot to then see a bunch of friction and say, okay, it's time to go, and then see that change. The depth of reaction will be later. The hybrid is just one step down from that, sort of in that middle ground in terms of RG. These ones are kind of meant to read a little bit before that cutoff of oil because the surface has a little bit more grittiness to it. It's not as shiny. It's a little bit more, you guys know what I'm saying, it has that more that marbly kind of look. Solids are the most aggressive version of this, or the ones that are going to have the overall lowest RG numbers. These ones are going to have that marbly sort of look and are going to have the easiest time responding to seeing even less friction than that of the pearls. These cover stocks are going to play into that RG number most specifically because that's the RG is what determines the latency of when that bowling ball likes to read the lane. And if we know that the cover stock is shiny and it's not going to have as easy of a time responding to friction until there's nothing but friction, we know that this ball is likely going to have an easier time reading the lane in a manner that's later on. Versus if we skip to the most drastic change, we have the solid, which is the one that's has that marbly or that more gritty surface. It's going to have an easier time responding when it sees less friction, meaning it's going to want to hook the lane more, which I guess in turn does impact the differential as well. But RG will see the biggest impact on these because of how the cover stock is reacting to that oil that's been applied onto the lane surface. So these are your most common ones. So, well, not your most common. Well, these are the ones you'll most commonly find because they're reactive resin and because the modern release and how many bowlers within the world today bowl, these balls just tend to have the most forgivability because of the fact that they get to play off of that oil that's meant to help us. Now, you may not find this as commonly when you're bowling in house shots or just your leagues as opposed to something when you're bowling in a tournament. We have, man, I don't know if I can type. We have this cover stock, urethane. So these balls, for those of you who know about the infamous purple hammer, which is what I was trying to look up earlier, ball was so good they had to ban it from the PBA. What makes both the urethane as well as the other cover stock different than that of reactive resin is, unlike the reactive resin, they're not meant to have those little micro sponges that open up and absorb oil. Urethane, as well as the other one, which is plastic, don't absorb it, but rather push it or repel it or reject it. That does not mean that oil cannot stick onto the ball. There will be oil that sticks onto the ball, but it's not going to soak it up, but rather keep it on the shell. It's not going to want to soak it up. It's going to repel it. Because of that, it doesn't respond to friction like that of reactive resin. Reactive resin is meant to solely read off of the oil pattern where the friction is most commonly, which is where the oil is no longer applied, where that cutoff of the pattern is. But urethane relies through, I guess the best word I can describe it is mechanical friction. The cover stock repelling that oil and not acting like a sponge, it's, in other words, always seeing some friction. I always struggle to explain this perfectly well, but these types of the bowling ball motion that you can expect out of these isn't the depth of reaction isn't really there. You know what I mean? If you see a reactive bowling ball, you can tell the moment where, or as many people like to say, the break point. You can tell when that bowling ball likes to see that break point, or when it sees the farthest right or left in this of where it goes, and you'll see that change in direction or that depth of reaction. Urethane doesn't really have that. Let me see if I have that photo. Might have gotten rid of it. Yeah, so this is an absolutely terrible photo that we'll reference later, but let's just look at this yellow line and this red one. This red one, although not what it actually looks like, for those of you who have been tuned into me for a while, this, to what our eyes think we see, this probably looks the most like a reactive bowling ball, right? You can see that very definitive moment when that bowling ball is seeing that friction and is beginning to actually capitalize on the technology and make its way back to the pocket. You see how this yellow one line here, although still not exactly what it looks like, never really has that definitive point. It kind of has like a arky, smooth, kind of a weird look. This is the best way I can kind of relate what a reactive resin ball looks like to what a urethane ball motion is going to look like. So it's responding to friction, but it's responding to it almost instantaneously because it's not responding to the cutoff of friction. It's responding to any little bit of friction it's seeing because it's repelling all that oil. It's strictly mechanical. if the bowling ball is just pushing oil off itself and it's never soaking it up, it's never really seeing that loss of friction from the oil. It's rather just kind of doing its own thing. It's a very weird mechanic. And the reason why there was all this debate about these bowling balls all them years ago is because it's repelling oil, it was changing how the lanes were transitioning by pushing oil down lane. It was pushing oil down lane, pushing oil down lane. And those who were throwing the reactive balls were hitting that repelled or pushed down oil where their ball's liking to respond. And their ball would either never hook, or it would hook way too early, or it would, whatever the case may be, it would just not be consistent, which is why they ultimately banned it from the PBA. And that kind of stuff is crazy, and it's crazy to think about that kind of stuff. But that's why they did what they did. But in the simplest terms, that's the way I can relate what a urethane ball motion looks like in relation to what a reactive ball motion is going to look like. The last one is a plastic ball. I can look up some plastic bowling balls. Let's see what we got here, guys. Oops, this one. Here's some plastic bowling balls. Plastic bowling balls. I'll look at the inside. I mean, you guys can see the cores are not very very fancy here. They're kind of whatever. But yeah, here you go. I mean, you can see they kind of look like your low end, I guess, entry level balls, maybe like to say. I mean, most of these are plastic bowling balls. It's giving me toys, but you guys know what I mean. This is a plastic bowling ball. This is a plastic bowling ball. Plastic reacts a lot like that of urethane, where it's a non-porous surface, but they intentionally manufacture these bowling balls to have a very, they don't really have a lot of technology within them in neither the cover stock nor what the core looks like. And because of that, these bowling balls are meant to just not respond to friction at all. They're meant to be, as many people say, a spare ball. For those of you guys who either have or know somebody who has a spare ball, it's very likely going to be this, because these bowling balls are repelling oil and they have no technology inside of them that's trying to see that change in direction. Here, I mean, if we go to some of these numbers, you guys will see what I mean. Here's a plastic bowling ball. Yeah, that's the core. Like let's see, does it even have the numbers? Yeah, I mean, look at the differential. The hook potential is 0.006, right? And that's a 15-pound ball. So, I mean, comparing that to 0.04 or something is drastically different. This is basically meant to go dead straight, guys. So, basically, what I'm trying to say is, guys, is it's meant to not hook. That's the simplest terms for it. I don't know what I just did. I was trying to pull something else up, and it kind of like messed up for me there, but whatever. That was kind of odd. But that's what a plastic cover stock is meant to be. So let's go on to, yes. So you guys heard me say previously that although we can't alter the cores of these bowling balls because they're inside of the bowling ball, we can. What did Debbie say? That what we have at League in my urethane ball. My ball doesn't react. Yes, yeah, exactly, Debbie. Because those urethanes, especially when you're in a league environment or something, when urethanes look good, they look good. But when they look terrible, it's very hard to do anything physically to make those balls react in a way you like, because all the friction it's relying on is strictly mechanical. If whatever's out there is not a good look for that type of bowling ball, it's never ever, going to look great no matter what it is that you do. But yes. So as I was just saying, you can alter the surface of this bowling ball. There are two things you can do. You can either make it grittier or try to make it smoother, make it stronger, read the lane sooner, or you can shine it up or polish it up to make it read the lane later, more like a pearl. So we have this applicable called a grit pad. This is so neat that I'm so glad we have this at our disposal. So let's look at some grip pads here. Here we go. I have some grip pads here. So we can see there's a bunch of these. These are grip pads. And you guys see this little number, like this one says 1,000, 4,000, 600, 360, 500, whatever the case may be. All of these grip pads have a different amount of, for lack of a better term, grittiness to them. Basically what you do to these is you'll scoop them up, you'll buy one, and you'll rub them into your bowling ball in a circular motion, whether it be by hand or with a machine, which if you guys need to look up how to do that, you can certainly do so. I won't go into all that here. But the lower the number is on these sanding pads, the more gritty that surface is going to be. The lowest one I've ever seen anybody actually apply is a 360. It's the lowest one I've ever seen used. Most commonly, the lowest one I see used is like a 500. The highest numbering one that I've seen is 4,000. So again, the lower this number is, the grittier it's going to make that ball. With more grit means that ball will have an easier time seeing friction sooner and read the lane sooner, or in other words, hook more, as I like to say, if you like to see the lane from left to right. So you can apply these onto your bowling ball, and it is worth noting that since your ball is rolling through oil, it's eventually going to wear out the amount of grittiness that's on the surface of that ball. But again, this is something that you guys can do if maybe you're out bowling or you're going to bowl a tournament and you know that the pattern isn't likely going to work well with the equipment you have. Try buying a grip pad or a sanding pad and see if you can kind of hit it with something and see if maybe it'll change how that ball's reacting to cater to what the friction is like out there and what you're bowling on. And the contrary to this, you can get a cleaner. Some of the, like the reactive foams, reactive cleans, clear magic. They got a bunch of these. They got tack up. They got all these different bowling ball cleaners. I just got the bronze up one. That's the one I've been using. But these cleaners are meant to kind of, many people will not use these to more so polish their ball, but more so just to clean it, because this allows you to extract some of that oil that reactive resin soaked up into its pores. But this can shine it up. I mean, if you guys hit something with a sand pad and then tried to hit it with this, I can tell you what, that sanding is going to go out of it pretty quickly. So again, whether you want to change that ball's motion to react either sooner or later is up to you. But these are appliables that we have that we can apply onto the surface of that bowling ball to change how it's reacting accordingly. Let me see. What else? Oh, yes, I made this note. So when you shine your bowling ball or you're trying to make the bowling ball read later, it's important to note, because you may think that, let's say you have a very gritty ball and you're like, I want my ball to hook less. I want my ball to hook less. I'm going to shine it and make it read the lane later. It's likely not going to change the differential on the ball that much. It's likely just going to change the RG. So your bowling ball is likely to hook a similar amount, but the shape in which that bowling ball is making is going to look different. Sounds weird, sounds confusing, but it is very true. I don't want you guys to think that me, making it gritty or making it shiny is going to change how much it's hooking. It's going to change the depth of reaction, which may make it look like it's changing how much it's hooking, but the overall left to right board coverage is likely going to be very similar, regardless of how shiny or how dull you make that surface. All right, let's keep on rolling along here. Making decent time. It's been an hour. I probably could go a little faster, but I knew these first 2 episodes were going to take us longer because I wanted to get through these big core concepts. All right. This is the complicated stuff, guys. I am not going to have us on this for too long because it's going to we're going to get down a rabbit hole, and I don't want to get down a rabbit hole here. So within episode 3, I covered the hidden tech, the cores once again. But I went into one of the most intricate topics, which is that Precession, which you guys heard me talk about with the little bottle tops. You guys heard me talk about that earlier. I don't even know how I want to start this, guys. So I'll just say it again. So I'm gonna verbatim read what I wrote. When your bowling ball is rolling down the lane, it's striving to reach an equalizing status or roll end over end. For those of you who know the 3 phases of ball motion, the skid, hook, roll, when you think of the roll and the ball's going end over end, that's the ball's always trying to get to that stage, but that skid and hook phase are the process of it getting to that end over end stage. This gyration process to make that ball reach equilibrium is what we call precession. This causes the rotation of the ball to shift, which is why you see those different oil tracks on your ball. In other words, with what the inside of these bowling balls is trying its best to do is roll end over end in a certain fashion. But depending on how you release the bowling ball is going to change how that process looks. All of us know we all release the bowling ball in a similar way, but we all release the bowling ball a little bit differently. Some people may get around the side of the ball. Some people may get more behind the ball. Some people get the ball to rotate along an axis that's tilted. Some people get to roll like a tire. Some people roll it like a bottle top. All that stuff changes this core's process within how you bowl. And the cores all look different, so they all have their own process as well. All right, so again, I know I'm getting all crazy here. So I'm not going to branch off too much. So let's keep rolling. So within this bowling ball, your ball is trying, because you're probably asking, okay, it's trying to reach equilibrium. How do I know where it's trying to reach equilibrium? Your ball is trying to rotate around what we call the PSA, yes, or the preferred spin axis. There are two different types of cores that we have within the bowling world. A symmetrical core, which is if I slice it down the middle, it will look the same on both sides, and a asymmetrical core, where if I slice it down the middle, the one side will look different than the other side. It's located in two different points. For a symmetrical bowling ball, is this a symmetrical bowling ball? Let's see. It is. It's a symmetrical bowling ball. Well, I'll look up one for an asymmetrical one. But on a ball like this, it's around or near where your thumb hole is placed. That's where the PSA is. For a asymmetrical PSA, let me just look at bowling ball. See if I can get a picture for you guys. Let's see. This should be a bunch of these have them. You guys can see how they're kind of laying out these balls. Here's the PSA here. This is so on asymmetrical balls, because they have that asymmetricity to it, they actually have a little dot or a little marker on the side of the ball called a mass bias marker. I'm showing that mass bias marker. Here we go. This might give us a better picture. There it is. There's a mass bias. That's too small. There's a mass bias. These are asymmetrical bowling balls. This mass bias on these asymmetrical bowling balls is where it's trying to rotate. On symmetrical ones, since they do not have a mass bias because they're symmetrical, it's a lot based off of where you drill the bowling ball. Now, because of the fact that that preferred spin axis or PSA is located in either a set spot or based off of where your thumb goes, if you guys ever hear people say, I want to lay out the ball, how am I going to make the layout of the ball? Because of the fact we all bowl differently, where I put my finger holes and my thumb hole, if I put one in the ball, if I put my thumb hole in the ball, where I drill them can be in a million different places. But where they are in relation to the PSA is going to change the process that the bowling ball has of precession. All of us, like I said, we have our own bowler DNA, right? Your release DNA, if you want to call it that, is defined by a PAP, or a positive axis point. So, okay, I'm throwing so much, guys. Bear with me. Positive axis point. Simplest way I can tell you guys. I might even be able to find one. PAP. Hold on, let's see if I can find one. I have a video or something. I want to see one rolling down the lane. PAP rolling down. Let's see if we can find one. This looks like it has something going down the lane. Let's see if we can find it. Let's see. I don't really care about it. I just want to show you guys it going down the lane with the tape in it. Does he not actually roll it down the lane? Ugh, boo. Roll the ball for me. All right, well, this works. So it's this line here, this arrow. This is a terrible graphic. So basically, whenever you immediately release the bowling ball, the ball isn't going to immediately be able to reach precession because of the fact there's so much oil in the beginning of the lane and it's just skidding. But what that means is, however you release the bowling ball for that very first handful of rotations, it's going to rotate about whatever axis it is that defines your release DNA, or that's what defines your PAP. So if I have a very tilted release and it's rotating about this axis, it's rotating like this is where my positive axis point is. it's rotating like this is where my positive axis point is. However, it's rotating in the immediate point you launch that bowling ball out of your hand is what defines where the positive axis point is. You can see in this photo, it's showing that it's spinning this way and rotating at this amount of degrees. It's a mixture of however much rotation and tilt out of your hand. This is where the positive axis point is. I want to see when actually rolling down the lane. Can someone put tape in the ball and show me it rolling down the lane? It's driving me nuts. This guy looks like he's on a lane. Roll the bowling ball. Oh, I think he is. Okay, here we go. Finally. Okay. So what a lot of people will do if you guys are trying to find your PAP, your pro shop operator will say, hey, I think I figured out, I'm going to put this tape on the bowling ball. Let's see if he actually did it. And you guys will see for the first handful of rotations, that piece of tape or whatever it is, that marker that they placed in it will stay perfectly still. And later on, once that process of gyration and precession takes over, that tape will go in different directions. Okay, there's the tape. You guys see this little white piece of tape? Okay, thank God I finally found one. Sorry about making you guys suffer through that. That was so rough. All right, but we're here. So first handful of rotations. Look on the left side of this man's bowling ball, and you guys will see that white tape. And as it goes down the lane, it's going to not be as in perfect position. There's the white tape. See how it's staying perfectly still? Then watch it now. See how it fell out of position? So I can slow this down a little bit more. Slow down. So it's staying in place, and then as it goes down, it spews off. That right there was precession taking over. So that exact point right here for this gentleman that's bowling, that is his PAP, or in other words, that is his release DNA. This is what defines where he tends to release the bowling ball and where it's rotating out of his hand. How this PAP relates to the PSA, or the preferred spin axis, will dictate how that process of precession looks. Let me speed this back up so this isn't messed up if we watch another video. But that's what I was trying to show. I'm so sorry that was so painful for everyone, to include me. Holy moly. Anyway, that was what I was trying to show you guys. So how you put your thumb and hands in the bowling ball will change where that PAP is. If for me, wherever my hand is laid out on this bowling ball, this is where my PAP is. If I then decide I want to put my hand here and drill it like this, now my PAP's here instead of wherever it was up here. That's going to change where it is related to where the PSA is. Okay, that's the bare bones basic, and that is all pro shop operator stuff that's specific. So if you guys have intricate questions about it, ask a pro shop operator that actually has some credentials to give you more of a in-depth description than that. But that is that is just the scrape the surface, shovel the snow off of the deck, basic outline of what those layouts and how that hidden technology is actually working and what is causing your ball to hook. So this is kind of a bounce off topic to that, but I want to still discuss it because this is extremely important in regarding adjusting. And then once we're done with this, I actually think adjusting is the next thing. Is yes, adjusting and basic lane play. We're going to go over a bunch of different concepts, but I would like to cover this. So with all this crazy information, with me talking about precession and the PSA and your PAP and your release DNA is your PAP and how it's related to the PSA and blah, blah, blah. Let's just say I didn't talk about any of that. And all you guys knew about was that process of precession and the bowl trying to reach the end over end roll. It's that's all I told you guys. We want our bowling ball to initiate that fully end over end roll. We do. We don't want the bowling ball to be like trying to get into this stable motion. What we do not want to have happen is to have it reach that equalized status too early. If your bowling ball is going fully end over end, your bowling ball is completely running out of gas in the basic terms. If you see your bowling ball going down a lane, I might be able to find a video of it again. I need to find roll out in bowling. Let's see. Basically, while I search this up, I'll still explain it. When the bowling ball burns up all of its energy too soon, and in other words, that process of precession occurs very quickly, the bowling ball initiates in that, oh my gosh, excuse me, guys. It reaches into that end over end roll too soon and has no oomph. The ball, it's almost like the pins hit the ball when your bowling balls reach that status too quickly. This will either happen because your ball saw too much friction too soon, or because you just have too much surface in the bowling ball. Like if you guys take your grit pad to the bowling ball and you start to notice it goes over end too quickly, bad news. Do not put any more grit on that bowling ball. You should try to shine it back up if that starts to happen. I want to find a video of it happening. It does roll out. Look. Oh. It won't show me it. I mean, that stinks. I was really hoping I could show you guys a better picture or a video of this. I should have looked this one up sooner. But in the simplest terms, without making things, I guess, too complicated, the bowling ball looks like it dies out. Because we all know what good ball motion looks like. We all know when the bowling ball is going and it sees that friction and it makes its turn. If your bowling ball looks really good and it never actually sees the full turn or never does enough when it sees all that friction after the cutoff of the pattern, that's what the rollout looks like. That is that bowling ball trying to tell you, hey, you let me go through that equalizing process too quickly, and I have no more oomph left. You burn me up too quickly. The ways to avoid that are to not chase as much friction as early. You have to learn to either glide your ball more up the center of the lane or increase your ball speed and give that ball less time on the lane to go through that process of precession. Those are your two options to adjust off of that. But if you guys physically can't play the lane in a different way or can't physically change how you're bowling the ball enough to get out of that problem, it's very, very difficult to avoid that rollout for the whole rest of the night, whether it be in a tournament or in a league. It's very, very difficult. I've seen very few bowlers actually find ways to navigate out of it without either increasing their speed or changing how they're playing the lane and keeping it more up the center of the lane where more of that oil lies. If a bowling ball sees oil or doesn't see friction, it slows down that process of precession, which is why rolling the ball more up the center of the lane where more of the oil is will help fix that rollout issue that you guys are falling victim to. Wait a minute. No, wait, I can get a video of it. Hang on. What am I doing? I have a video on this, don't I? I think I do. Hang on. I have a short. Knew it. Perfect. All right. Let's look at this, guys. Maybe if it can load. Oh, show me this video. I just had it. Well, I'm getting it, guys. I promise. Here we go. All right. Let's look at this. Let's look at this video. I should zoom in on it. So if you notice, it looked like it was going to make a left turn, and it just never really did. Zoom in on this thing here. So it looks good. We can see the bowling ball start to read. And what good ball motion would look like is we would actually see this ball not go fully end over end too soon, and it would make its way back. But you may notice it and now it's just going dead straight. The bowling ball equalized itself too quickly and straightened itself out, and it just, don't get me wrong, guys, I struck, but that was not good. That's not going to happen. You'll notice how the ball deflects almost into the right gutter. The thing got beat up out there. Just not a good look. I can't believe that struck. That's probably why I posted it. That was funny. But that is what rollout looks like and what you want to avoid. You don't want that technology to take over too quickly and change the motion that your bowling ball is creating for you. All right, well, let me zoom out here because now my whole thing's all zoomed in. Perfect. All righty. Okay, well, I apologize again. I'm glad we got to at least finally find it. Let me see. All right. Adjusting, everybody's favorite thing. So before I get into, because I'll be talking about adjusting that you guys can be conducting both physically and just, all the adjustments are physical adjustments that you're making that will change how your ball is navigating on a lane surface. A lot of this stuff is just going to be very basic level. I'm not going to go too deep into many of this stuff because a lot of it's covered in just a bunch of other things, as well as I'm talking about a lot of it in the From Feet to Fingertips playlist. So once we get into that, then I can go into more of the exact physical things that you guys can be changing. But for this, I'll be saying what physical things you can change that will change how that ball is navigating down the lane. So, in terms of adjusting, everyone wants to learn how to adjust and create room for themselves and find ways to strike more often and make it easier for themselves and whatever. It's impossible to adjust if your physical game is not consistent. If the bowling ball comes out of your hand a different way every time you release the bowling ball, Debbie said, yeah. If the bowling ball comes out of your hand a different way every time, what does that mean? We just talked about that PAP measurement, right? And how there's that moment where that tape is perfectly still. If you don't release the bowling ball the same way every time, you don't have a PAP. You don't really have a definitive PAP because the bowling ball isn't coming out of your hand the same way. If I stuck tape in a spot and released it a different way on the next shot, of course the tape's not going to look perfect because I am not releasing it the same way. And if you don't release it the same way, a lot of adjustments you're making are not going to really be that meaningful, or they aren't going to actually allow you to play the lane in a way that's going to be beneficial. You're not going to actually be able to adjust the way that you're thinking. So take a lot of things with a grain of salt, but better yet, know what you should be changing physically to allow yourself to be consistent with these adjustments that you're making. The first key topic that we need to understand is the oil that we're on. I don't know why this thing will not stay on. Kind of odd to me. So this is a very crude picture of the oil here that I kind of drew up on this little thing. So this is kind of what our oil looks like. I could pose up a house oil pattern. There we go. Let's see. I might even have one in here actually. Let's see. There's a house pattern. Although it's not to scale, this is a house pattern. The darkness of the orange shows a higher amount of oil in that section, and a less dark amount shows less oil in that section of the lane. So when you're looking at this, this is what most of your guys' typical house shots are going to look like. You guys can see that around on that second arrow for both lefties and righties is where the oil starts to kind of increase itself. The ratio will be about 1 to 10. So everything to the right of this arrow is about a tenth of how much is on the inside of these arrows, which is pretty crazy, right? That's a pretty big amount of ratio. So many people are commonly asking, what are the basics of adjusting? What should I be learning to move to change how my ball is traveling down the lane? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's just draw a very crude line here. What color do you guys like? Blue? We'll do purple. Matches the flamingo. Let's just say, make it a little smaller. Let's say you're looking at the third arrow. Here comes your ball. Yay. And you're striking. That's the ball motion you're making. Congratulations. Where you're going to find the vast majority of miss room is by catering where your break line is. I would like to draw it on the 2-scale photo. I think I'm just going to use a 2-scale photo. Now that you guys have kind of seen it. This is what a lane looks like to scale. It does not look like the other one. It's actually very long. It is very deceiving. It does not look like a lot of it. So in the last video, how would you adjust? In the last video, oh, actually, yeah, that's a good one. You know what? Let's go back to the other one because it's easier for me to draw on. So in that video that we just watched with the rollout, what we were seeing, I guess purple's kind of fitting. What we were seeing was this. Let's get my purple back again. I was rolling the ball. Oopsies. I was rolling the ball. It was getting outside. It was seeing a bunch of friction. It was dying out. It was seeing too much friction. The ball had too much easy of a time processing, and it went fully end over end, and it burned out too early. I have 2 things I can do here. We'll say the blue is my my changed approach. I can either learn to play the inside of the lane more, where there's less friction because there's more oil, and then get it to come out later. Or I can just overall just increase my speed, increase my ball speed, get it to hook a little bit later on down the lane. Those are your 2 options you have, Debbie. That's really about it. And more commonly than not, the moving inside and playing up where the oil is going to be more beneficial for you. But this kind of actually is great question, Debbie, because this actually plays into what I was going to cover if you guys are wanting to find miss room or find areas that you guys can, not have to be accurate and hit a penny on a lane, is by playing to where this ratio is. This ratio is your best friend. What the ratio allows you to take advantage of is the miss room. For example, if I'm playing up the third arrow and my bowling ball is getting out to about here and I'm seeing success and I'm striking, and I'm playing to where my friction line or my break point, as many people like to say, is where the ratio is, I'm going to see the most success because of this reason. If I miss to the right a little bit at the arrows, it's going to hit where less of the oil is and we'll have an easier time hooking sooner and making its way back to the pocket. If I miss to the left of where this is a little bit, it's going to be up where a bunch of oil is and isn't going to want to hook as much until later. That's where the miss room is. So whatever pattern it is you're bowling on, your question is my break point on or around where the ratio of oil is? It may be a 10-to-1 ratio, which is very forgiving like we have here in a house shot, or it may be on a harder one. You guys can see the ratio. Someone should say ratio. Ratio is about 2-to-1 on this pattern. So, I mean, that's pretty low. But where does the ratio lie? Right here. Although it's not a great amount of ratio, this is where it lies, right up about 5. So this is where you'll find most bowlers are playing in the break point. Break point. You guys don't like to say break point, but I say it just so everyone knows it. This is about where you'll find most of your successes within this section here. So again, lane play comes by knowing where is the friction? Where will I find the most success if I am to miss? Nobody is perfect. Don't go bowling expecting yourself to be perfect because that's not what's going to be perfect. And if you guys know that down lane, this is what I should be looking at. All other adjustments, however you have to move to get your bowling ball to get to that same spot down lane, is what's going to be advantageous for you. How to increase speed, stand back more. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that is a way that you can increase your ball speed, which I will happily get into. So now that we kind of understand the oil, which that'd be a great question. It actually kind of fed into what I wanted to say, which is understanding this ratio, where I can find my ratio of my oil. That goes into basic moves. If I'm rolling a bowling ball and it's not hooking enough, oh no, dang it, I can't get my ball to respond. Move in the direction of your miss. If I was to move to the right, but keep this same down lane area target, it will be hitting more friction sooner because there's less oil toward the outside and we'll have easier time hooking, but in a similar facet down lane. The opposite is true if I have the opposite problem. If I'm rolling the ball here and it's hooking too much and going through the face, again, keeping this same breakpoint area in line. If I move to the left, that means it will be, that was a bad drawn line. If I move to the left, since I missed to the left, that means I will be where there is more oil for longer. It will hit in the same area down lane and will get me where I want it to go. Now, we're looking at a very nice picture that makes it look like left and right moves are perfect. But this is the actual dimensions of the lane. This is not very wide, is it? Actually, not very wide at all. So left and right moves will make a very big change quickly because there isn't a lot of left and right moves to work. There isn't a lot of left and right we can move. But forward and back moves can cause more minute changes. I'm going to go back to this since it's so much easier to draw. If I'm looking here, I like the purple. We'll do the purple again. If my bowling ball is close, maybe it's like just a teeny bit light, but not a lot, just a teeny bit light. If I was to make a small move to the right, that might be too much because, again, the lane's not that wide. So what could I do to get my bowling ball to get just a teeny bit closer without moving left or right? If I just stay on the same spot but throw a tad bit slower, that means my ball has a little bit more time to stay on the lane and see more friction and hook. So that can get my ball to hook a little bit more. Or I could, provided you don't get right up on the foul line, take a half step forward and release the bowling ball a little bit closer to the foul line, meaning I'm basically just taking this here, or back. I mean, I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly. I wanted to move it, but I guess it won't let me. Let me redraw this again, guys. Sorry. I'm here. Bowling ball just won't quite get there. I'm keeping the same area in line. If I take a half step back, I'm essentially taking this line and going, whoop, and I'm a little closer versus when I took a half step forward, wherever I was. It's a little light here. Take a half step back. Whoop, perfect. If I'm a little bit too tight, if I take a half step forward, whoop, perfect. I can make a very small adjustment without having to move left and right and do all this fancy stuff. Very, very useful. Basic bowling adjustments 101 is just knowing if you move in the direction of your miss, it will get you where you want to go. If you miss to the left, move to the left, but keep a same target down lane. If I miss to the right, move to the right, but keep the same target down lane. Because the depth of reaction is what we're trying to control, which I'll talk about more later on. Speed is most commonly going to be altered physically. You have to make a change physically, which I know Johnny said how to increase speed, stand back more. And I'm sure Johnny's probably like, wait a minute. Coach Logan was saying if I take a half step back, that's gonna change where my line is. Why is it white? Why does it have to do that to me? And probably like, okay, Coach Logan, if I take a half step back, well, wouldn't that, not be making my ball speed increase? It's all about knowing what works for you. I'm saying if you don't change anything, you don't change your speed, you don't change your whatever, if you take a half step back or forward, it will do this accordingly to your line. If you take a step left or right, it will do this accordingly, right? But for many of us, if we take a half step forward, we might be a little closer to the foul line. We might want to release the ball slower. If we take a half step back, we're a little bit farther away from the foul line, and we may want to release the ball with a bit more speed because we have more room to work with to create more momentum. It's all about knowing what adjustment physically will create the change that you're looking for here, which is what we'll talk about more in the Feet to Fingertips playlist. But in general, to make the ball hook more, you have three options. Either move to the right to get your ball to hit the friction more, throw the ball slower to give your ball more time on the lane, or take a half step back and release the bowling ball a half step back to make that bowling ball respond a little bit sooner. If you want to make the ball hook less, you have the same three options, but reversed. Either move to the left or right if you're a lefty, move a half step forward or release the ball a half step closer to the foul line to push that break line down more or increase your speed. It's the basics of it. A very basic adjustment for those of you who have heard this before, which I was taught, it kind of works, but it's okay. We like to call it the rule of three. Depending on how far off of the head pin or whatever pin it is you are on, you will move 3 boards for every pin it is within that direction. Let's say I roll a bowling ball and I hit, and I hit the pocket of these 2 pins. I am a pin off of the pocket of where I want to hit. If I move 3 steps to the right and release the bowling ball and keep that same target down lane, I should theoretically, that is not right. 3 boards left right about here. I should theoretically get that ball to hook a little sooner and get to where I want. We call it the rule of 3. For every pin you want to change off of where you're at, it's 3 steps in the opposite direction. If I'm bowling here and I want to hit the 10 pin, it's 1, 2, 3 pins over. I'll move 9 boards left. So right about here, keep a similar target down lane, direct that ball. That's all it is. The rule of 3s. It's a very old school rule. It does help. It does certainly work. It at least gets you in the realm of where you would like to be. But it can be flawed because of the fact that bowlers are rolling in different ways. Absolutely, Debbie. I'm glad that it gave you some of the clarification you're looking for. So let me see if I went over everything I want to talk about. Consistency is key. We talked about that. We understand what the oil pattern looks like. We talked about basic left-right moves as well as that rule of 3s or 3-6-9 rule. We talked about some of the forward and backward moves, understanding if a forward move may change your speed. Again, that's up to knowing your physical bowling DNA. We talked about, let's talk about front to back moves, speed control, basic left and right. Yep, perfect. Let's see what else I wanted to talk about here for basic adjusting. Yes, so, or do I talk about that in the next one as well? I think I'll go into. Okay, yeah, okay. So I'll go into this thing I wanted to talk about. So, all right, if you guys are pathway of learning folks, you guys. Ooh, excuse me. Gosh, I just cannot get these hiccups out of my mind. Wherever these things are. If you guys have been tuned into me for a little while now, you guys have seen this graphic a handful of times. Congratulations, you're going to go over it again because we have a handful of new viewers more than likely. So let's go over it. So there is no luck within the sport of bowling. The pins fall the way they fall for a reason. And if you are not striking, it is not because you are unlucky. It is because you are not hitting the head pin in the correct spot. Adjusting, everyone thinks adjusting is all about changing how my ball navigates, changing how my ball looks that's going down the lane. But what I'm going to demonstrate to you guys here is your ball the pins do not care what the heck your ball did on its way down. The only thing the pins care about is how you're hitting them in relation to how your ball navigated down the lane. What the correct or optimal strike within the sport of bowling is. Again, I'm drawing everything in the perspective of a righty, so bear with me. Let's get my purple back again. This purple will be the path of the ball. Your ball will make contact with the 1 pin, the 3 pin, the 5 pin, and the 9 pin. The pins will then collide with each other in such a manner. You will send the 1 pin into the 2 pin, the 2 pin into the 4 pin, the 4 pin into the 7 pin. After your ball deflects off of the 1 pin into the 3, you will send the 3 into the 6 and the 6 into the 10, then sending the 5 pin into the 8, and your ball will just simply hit the 9 itself. Let's talk about why you leave a 10 pin. Oh man, I left 18-10. My buddy left 18-10 pins. He must be just so unlucky. No, because this is what happened, guys. Your bowling ball didn't quite get close enough to the head pin and deflected a little bit too much this way. So what happened? You hit the head pin into here, into here, into here. You hit the 5 pin barely into the 8. You hit this 3 straight back almost, which hit this 3, the 6 pin off to the side. And it went around the 10 pin and left it. If you leave a 10 pin, you may commonly find the 6 pin sitting in the gutter beside it because that's what your ball did. If you felt that you were unlucky because you left a 9 pin, oh, how could I possibly leave that again? Here's why. Your ball didn't deflect enough, came in really heavy, and went straight by, just like that. So you did one of these. Oops, give me my blue back. There's your 9 pin. So I'm just giving you guys a couple of different examples here. What I'm trying to tell you guys is everyone, when they focus on adjusting, they're caring about, oh, did my ball go down the lane the right way? Did my ball do whatever this, blah, blah, blah. What really matters is, did my ball go through the pins the right way? And why I'm discussing that is because what we care about in the navigation aspect, the only thing we care about in the navigation aspect is our depth of reaction. Because our depth of reaction changes the angle of which we are attacking this head pin accordingly, which I'll come back to later on. But just wanted to store that in your guys' memory for just a very brief moment. Let's close this out so I can get my stuff all aligned again here because we're kind of hopping all over the place. So again, for those of you who have heard that already, that's pretty stuff that you guys have already heard. It's in the pathway of learning. If you have not heard about it, I strongly advise you guys go take a peek. But that's the kind of stuff that matters in adjusting. The only thing that adjusting is getting you is that exact result. That is what adjusting is attempting to create. Is the pins don't care. What the pins care about is if you're hitting them in the right spot. And adjusting is what lets you hit them in the right spot. So don't worry about so much about, oh, is it reading on this exact board on this? Care more about, look at how your ball's traveling through those pins and see if the pins are liking what your ball's doing. Okay. Where am I here? I lost my train of thought. So that deflection characteristic and knowing those navigation aspects and whatever you like to refer to it as is all tying into this understanding your equipment concept, because it's all about knowing what your equipment is meant for and what is optimal for what you're trying to hit. Some of these spares that we're looking at, you may want to attack at a different angle. Show you guys what I mean. If you guys have these 3 pins left, the 3, 6, 10, we know we have a couple of options. We can either hit the 3 pin on the left side and send the pins into each other, or we can hit it kind of like we're hitting a baby strike and send the ball like this. Those are your 2 options. But maybe when you think about it, what's really optimal is, if you think about it, if we could throw it like a lefty and have the ball come in like this, that would theoretically be a little bit easier to actually hit all these pins. Because for those of you who know, if you guys come in at an angle like this, you might hit it too close here and miss. You might hit it too close and send this pin around the 10, or maybe you might, miss it altogether, whatever the case may be. It's about knowing what's optimal for what it is you're attacking. If you can theoretically throw this ball straight, it's going to have easier time deflecting this direction and hitting all the pins itself. We don't want to come in at a super steep angle like this, because then it makes it way easier for you to chop that spare. Bucket's the same way. If you leave these 3 pins here, if you could come in right up the gut and have your ball hit everything, that's way easier than, coming in like this and you miss light and you send that pin around it, or you come in heavy and you leave this pin or whatever. So it's all about knowing what angle is optimal for the thing I'm attacking, and how can I change how I'm playing up this lane, the navigation aspects, to get that angle I'm looking for. That's what matters, because many people might think I should stand over here and hook at this, and then you chop it and you leave ugly stuff. But again, guys, know what you're attacking at, and the navigation aspects will make more sense. I'm trying not to go too deep into some of these, because again, I think we'll waste time if I go too deep into this, unless you guys have a question about it. But you guys, with me just drawing this out, I think you guys are getting the concept. I'd like to think so. So, why do I have this up? Why do I have that up? What was I just discussing? I am so discombobulated today. Let's see. I think that was really it for that one. So let's go back to understanding. I needed to move my thing over. Let me get this back up over here. There we go. All right. So you guys should be able to see this again. So understanding this angle of entry I was just discussing about a brief moment ago. Wait, what angle is your bowling ball coming in on this head pin, and how is it attacking the head pin? Most bowlers are going to do best when they attack this head pin between 3 and 6 degrees, which doesn't sound like a lot. You may be thinking that you're hooking the lane a lot more. But if we just go over here and look at this short, I'll just let this play in the background while I'm talking. You guys will see that there really isn't a lot of angle within these. Oh my gosh, whoops. This is 2 degrees, by the way. So from 3 to 6 degrees, that's the 3-degree mark. You may find that these really aren't that, it's very deceiving, because the lane is so thin. It looks so much wider than what it really is. So you guys are between, this is the 3 degrees, from 3, 4, 5, between this line here and this line here is where most of you guys are going to be attacking the head pin at. That's about what's optimal. When you guys are looking at that, it looks deceiving for one, but depending on what of these angles you're attacking the head pin at will change how close you have to hit on that head pin. What I mean by this is, the more from the side your bowling ball is coming in, or the more aggressive of an angle it is your bowling ball is coming in, the easier time it's going to have continuing its energy this way, versus the less steep of angle I have, the easier time it's going to have getting bounced this way, right? What that means is I have to change where I'm making contact with the head pin depending on the angle of entry I am creating with how I'm navigating my bowling ball. If you have a aggressive angle of entry, you have to hit a little bit looser on that head pin since the bowling ball is going to have easier time carrying its energy this way. If I'm having a less aggressive entry angle, I have to hit closer toward the center so it bounces this way. Get what I'm saying? Because if I have a very steep angle of entry and I hit right pretty close, my ball is going to go this way and not do what I want it to do. Vice versa, if I have a very not steep angle of entry and I hit loose, it's going to get bounced over this way and not do what I want it to do. So again, it's about optimizing how close to that head pin you're getting based off of the angle of entry that you're creating. And your every adjustment you guys make within this area is meant to cater to this end result. Because again, the pins do not care. The pins do not care the pins only care about what happens from here on out. Did your ball do this? Did your ball do this? Did your ball do what did it this is what it cares about. It does not care about anything below this. With that being said, your adjustments should cater to whichever of these angles of entry you're attempting to create. So when you guys hear me saying, oh, like, if you move left, it's going to make the ball hook less. The only reason it's hooking less is because it's hooking at a later point in time, right? So some people may think, oh, I'm missing light. My ball's deflecting off the right and it's not getting me the carry I need. I should move to the right so it gets closer. That's an option you have. Or you could move left and slow down and get that ball to hook later and have a steeper angle of entry to carry through the pins correctly. This is some hard knock stuff, guys. I'm getting into some pretty intricate and high level thinking. But what most bowlers, why is it still drawing? What most bowlers think is the correct adjustment may be just one of the 90 things that you have as an option to be an adjustment. It's not meant to be one size fits all because we all do better in different things. It's just a way of fact. All right, let's see here. So this all kind of ties into your bowling ball, how it's just to roll out. Your ball is trying to manage its energy and manage that process of precession and manage how that bowling ball is actually navigating down the lane. Now, your ball should be releasing that energy at the correct point. Just before your bowling ball is making contact with those pins, it should be seeing that end over end roll like we were just discussing about. Your bowling ball can't get more speed. However much speed you have as that ball is being launched out of your hand is the maximum amount of speed that bowling ball is going to have. It's always going to lose speed. It's always going to lose energy. There's no free energy in the world. I wish there was. Although I like to say gravity is a free energy source, it's because you're applying energy to the ball that you get to take advantage of that gravity. But you can't get more speed. You can't get more anything. So the only way that you can see problems is if your ball loses too much of that energy too quick. You can't store energy, you can't do whatever, but by making sure that your bowling ball is reading at the correct time in relation to the amount of deflection that you need to be getting. I don't know why this is really not liking it right now. It's like drawing and doing a bunch of stupid stuff. I'm trying to draw this a little bit better, but a little looser. He wants a little tighter. As long as you're catering the angle of entry to where your bowling ball is reading on the lane, you'll see success. And the only time you're not seeing success is when your ball's releasing its energy either too quickly or too late. That's what we don't want. That's it. That's all adjusting is. And because of something else that we also is just kind of common sense we don't like to think about is this oil. We can't just make more oil appear. We can't just do that. We can't make more oil pop up on the lane. Whatever has been laid out is the maximum amount of oil that lane will see throughout the entire block it is that you're bowling in. And with that being said, given that we know that some of these bowling balls are soaking up oil, like the reactive resin ones, and some of them are even pushing down some oil, like those urethane ones, this is going to change how you have to adjust to keep that same entry angle that you're looking for. If you guys know your ball's reading in this area and this is the entry angle that's working, if this was the previous way before it dried up that you got to that angle, You may have to change that to avoid this junk in the front by rolling around it. This is the stuff that should stay the same. Whatever happens and whenever your ball's initiating into that roll sequence is what should be the same. What changes, depending on how the lane breaks down, is all the stuff before that. That's it. That's all it is. It's all you guys are changing. If this purple line is before all this oil was getting soaked up and pushed down, and this blue one is what you guys had to resort to after this oil was broken down, then guess what? You may feel like, oh, I'm playing the lane a completely different way. You're not. You're accomplishing the same result. You have to be. Unless you decide to change the exit angle or change where it is you're playing at the break point, which, I mean, that is always an option that you have, right? But to any end, you're getting the same look with both colors, no matter what. No matter what. And this is with me blowing it up on a normal photo of actual 2-scale lane dimensions. I mean, you're really not, you can only move so much, guys. This is how much you can move. It's just so interesting to me. It really is. So let me see what else is on here I wanted to discuss. I really think I caught the big stuff. Oops. Most bowlers do best from 3 to 6 degrees. Your angle of entry dictates the deflection you are getting. Your adjustments are meant to play to that angle of deflection you're getting. Your ball should be releasing energy at the correct time. We don't want it to not release enough energy, and we don't want it to release too much energy too quick and get that rollout. Your ball can't get more speed, and there cannot be more oil on the lane than what started, but how it's been moved around can change. Adjustments are what create the energy management you're looking for. Yep. Changing how your ball is navigating to that, where the break line is what's going to change that. Where that ratio of the oil is where you'll find most of your room to be. Although it is worth noting, since that is where you will find most of your room to be, is where this ratio is, you'll most commonly find that most other bowlers will also be trying to target a very similar area, meaning this drying up and this redepositing of oil after the cutoff line of where it was previously is going to be sped up in that area. So sometimes if you are getting a high-low or an inconsistent, basically, if you hit it in this same area and sometimes it hooks too much, sometimes it doesn't hook enough, it's just inconsistent, then avoid it. Because now maybe the line moved over here. Maybe because of all this oil that's been shoved down, the look of where you thought was optimal may have changed. But again, there cannot be more oil than what started, and you cannot get more speed. And what it's all about, the only thing that matters, is getting that ball to release its energy at the correct time and travel through those pins the correct way based off of that angle of entry you're attempting to create. Let's see what else. I will pull up this very quick little clip here. It would help if I could open this up. Let's see. Why am I so zoomed in? Holy moly. Let's go over here to these again. I wanted to show you guys this. Let's just watch this video a handful of times. So I'll go over this very quickly because we kind of have been discussing it pretty much the entirety of the stream so far. So I don't want to go into it too much. But this is help if it would play the video. This is a basic skid, hook, and roll video I made a little while ago. That is not my video, sir. There it is. So we have those 3 phases I was discussing about where you can actually see that precession beginning to take precedent, I guess. You'll see it start to kind of bottom out toward the end of the lane. But you'll see in the beginning of the lane, the ball is just having that linear look. Toward the midsection of the lane, that ball will begin to see that change in direction back toward the head pin. And just before the head pin, the ball bottoms out, goes under end, and travels through those pins, just like how it is here. Notice how it goes right here. So the ball stays on line right here the whole time it's traveling through the pins this right way. Boom, perfectly. So again, how it's traveling through these beginning parts of the lane may change. But what should always look the same is what happens past this dark green. You always want this exact same end result. But whatever has to change here to get that same end result is what you need to focus and prioritize on changing. That is what the key to adjusting is. Many people overthink it. You think too much about what's happening here and what's happening here and what's happening, all this stuff beforehand. Focus on the later half of the lane. That's the part that really matters. And you may notice he's getting his ball to about like what 7 or 8 to the right at the break line. Yeah, like 7 or 8. So he's keeping it within where the ratio likely is of this house shot that this guy is bowling on. So it's getting him that reaction he's looking for. And if you guys are bowling and you guys miss your target, then you get to reap the benefit of that oil that's laid out. If he misses to the left, it'll stay in the deeper oil for longer and it'll have an easier time hooking later and staying on line. If he misses to the right, he'll hit the dryer and it'll come back and respond. There's the help you're looking for. So focus on what's happening here and keep it within the ratio. Keep it well within the ratio, and you guys, I promise, guys, the room will come. The only thing that becomes complicated is just being aware of where other bowlers are playing and avoiding the junk they're messing up beforehand. Because only if you start to hit some goofy stuff before this break line or this later half of the lane is when your bowling ball will not respond in a consistent manner that you're looking for. Get my other drink ready. We're doing pretty good. I'm honestly shocked my voice hasn't given out even more than it has now. And again, adjusting, as much as I love to answer questions and adjusting, which if you guys have questions, please ask. About anything, you guys know by now to ask. Adjusting is very difficult because we all adjust in different ways because our bodies physically like to do different things to adjust better to certain things. So you have to be able to analyze some things within yourself to know what physical thing you have to adjust to ultimately create that end result is going to be. Let me see. What else do I have on my notepad for this? I'll just keep playing so you guys can keep watching it. All of episode 6 is basically me talking about this exact concept of the skid, hook, and roll. Like pretty much the whole episode is me talking about it, and the process of precession should take over just before the pins and all that stuff, which is what I've been discussing this whole time. So we're actually really good on time, which is what I anticipated was going to happen. So I will go over to episode 7, which is actually kind of what we've been delving into again, which is me talking about navigating the transition, navigating whatever. So we kind of been talking about it, right? There cannot be more oil on the lane. It only dries up or gets shoved down. When oil gets dried up, that means your ball will want to see friction sooner and will want to hook more. Which, for all intents and purposes, I'll draw the before and after. This purple's been our best buddy, so we'll say the purple's before. So imagine this isn't here. If this is where you're bowling normally and you're seeing success, if later on, after there's been some play on it, again, oil's drying up, if you don't change anything at all, you're likely it's going to look good to start, but then it's going to see that friction and it's going to hook sooner, and it's not going to give you the reaction you're looking for. So what are ways we can combat this? Let's go back to the basics of adjusting. We have three ways. We can either roll the ball faster. I was going to try to draw faster to indicate me throwing faster, but if I try to draw faster, I can't draw well. But if you throw the ball faster, it's going to have an easier time gliding through that friction, and it'll have an easier time holding on. If I move to the left where more of the oil is, but keep that similar target down lane, I'll be able to avoid some of that burned up junk and still get a similar reaction of what I'm looking for. Or if I simply take a half step back, or if I make a half step forward, because now, here, let me draw a blue one, make it a little easier. Here's my blue line. Make a new layer, actually. Here's my blue line. Here's the problem I'm running into. It's hooking a little too early, right? Because it's hitting that. If I take a half step forward, boop. Perfect. Problem solved. Those are your 3 answers you got. Perfect. Now, the other problem is that you may run into is you may be falling victim to this junk that was pushed down. When people are throwing a lot of plastic or urethane balls, because of the fact that they're not soaking up things and likely don't flare as much, those balls are what is going to cause most of this junk to get pushed to where the oil cutoff normally is. So if you're bowling normally, and let's say you're a deeper player, let's say you're bowling normally and your ball kind of looks like this, you may fall victim to something like this, where your ball looks great, you avoid all the burnt up stuff, and you hit all that extra oil that was shoved down, and your ball never makes it. Very common problem. Many people are like, Coach Logan, how can my ball be hooking less if I know that more oil can't appear? Well, it's because the stuff that got shoved down is now impacting where your ball was initially trying to read the lane, that later part of the lane. That's what it's impacting. So again, very similarly to before, you have a handful of options here. You can either slow down your ball to get it to read a little sooner. I can move to the right and catch some of that earlier friction and get my ball to read a little bit before this junk. Or if I don't change anything and my ball is now not hooking enough, if I take a half step back, now it's getting in there. It's the same stuff, guys. It's the same exact antidote for basically most of the problems you guys are running into. This is what it's all about right here. This is what it's all about. I love talking about adjusting. Adjusting is so unique. And again, it's all about knowing your physical capabilities. If you guys can't physically throw the ball slower or can't throw the ball faster to get the change you're looking for, then don't make that change. If you guys don't feel comfortable moving left or right of where you're standing because you're not going to be consistent, then don't make that change. That's just not going to be beneficial for you, right? And again, we're only talking about adjusting if you don't change balls. But again, it's about knowing your equipment and about buying different equipment, which I'll talk about more again later. And knowing when to change balls will be the last thing I'm talking about. But if you got a ball, and no matter what you do, this ball just will not respond. If you do this, if you go here, it doesn't respond. Nothing you guys can do. Grab a different bowling ball that has a different ball DNA, as we referred to it. Maybe it'll get that reaction you guys are looking for. Pretty neat stuff. I'm very, very excited to talk about how to know when to change balls later on, because it's very, very easy. I think a lot of people like to overcomplicate it. So let's see. Oil transition. Yep, I just talked about that. Controlling ball motion. Yep. The only key element is controlling that depth of reaction. Keeping that depth and where that bowling ball is reacting in a similar area is what's going to be the best beneficial for you. Kind of beating a dead horse there. Oops, I just pulled up my files. Beating a dead horse there. Let me pull up my notes again. Let's see. What else we got over here? We got, no wonder I always got to move right on your thing. Yep, Richard. Yep, that's what it is. Yep. This junk right here is what gets a bunch of people. And that's why they were getting upset about it and why the PBA doesn't do it. Allow those urethanes with those hardness to go in, because they just cause this transitional problem to occur so quickly that all the reactives just looked like junk. Because if they were able to get their reactives through the burned up stuff in the front, it would just die out in the back. But if they couldn't get it through the burnt up stuff in the front, it would hook away on them. So they get that high-low action or that inconsistency, and it caused a massive amount of problems. But yeah, that's what that urethane is doing, because it's not absorbing anything, guys. It's just shoving stuff. Same with plastic. It's just pushing oil. Let me see. Let me pull up my notes again. I just want to be sure I don't miss anything, guys, because there's a lot of stuff in here. Launch angle. That's another good one we can talk about. So launch angle is whatever path you project the ball at the point of release. So if my bowling ball looks like, oh my gosh, I cannot draw with this mouse. If my bowling ball looks like this, right? It hooked, right? But my launch angle was this. That's the direction I started the ball and launched it. If I started like this, we'll do something like really drastic. This was my launch angle. Or whatever. I can't draw across it. There we go. That's my launch angle. Or if you want something even funnier, there we go. This is my launch angle. So launch angles are useful to know. Why is that useful to know? Well, your launch angle is going to have to change depending where your ball goes down lane. Because theoretically, I always say controlling that depth of reaction. If my depth is around here, and I'm keeping it around the ratio line. So when I map this out, this is roughly where my ball is seeing most of the friction. If I'm a right-handed bowler, think about whenever you're adjusting, the only way I can get my ball to gloss over this, no matter what angle I'm coming from, if it's over here, whatever, is if my launch angle is either at it, I cannot draw straight, either at it or to the right of it. It's got to be something over here. Or in other words, I have to have my launch angle should be like this. Why is that? Because if my launch angle is not at it, my ball is never going to hit that spot I want it to hit. But if my launch angle starts off at it, whether it reads early or reads later, it's still going to get me a very similar depth of reaction down lane. Only time you're going to lose that is if you're not projecting it where the ball is ultimately going to go, which is what I always say is what about being accurate it's all about, as well as just projecting it in a manner that's going to get it to react similarly. When you're adjusting, your targeting has to be extremely, extremely dialed in, especially when you're moving left and right. Because if I'm a third arrow looker, if I just love looking at this third arrow and I'm trying to get my ball somewhere in here whenever I bowl, if I'm looking at this third arrow and I'm rolling the ball here and it's going where I want it to go, but then let's say maybe my ball's not hooking enough. It's not hooking enough, so I have to move to the right. If I move right, but look at this same arrow here, guess what? My launch angle isn't going to be where I want it to go anymore. So wherever you're targeting, you have to think, am I projecting the ball either at where my ball is going to read the lane or to the right or more toward the outside of the lane of where that ball is going to read the lane? And if that's not the answer, that means you're not going to be accurate and you're not going to get the ball where you think you're getting it. That's a very commonly overlooked concept that I think a lot of people don't think about, because most of us, when we target things, we like to look at these. We like to look at these arrows. That's what we all like to look at. Most of us do. Got it. That's cool. But just be sure that you're aware that wherever it is you're adjusting, make sure that whatever arrow it is you're looking at is projecting it at that point you want that ball to react. I've seen this so many times where people will be like, oh man, my ball didn't hook enough, Coach Logan. I think I don't want to do. I'm going to move to the right. Okay, go for it. And they'll look at the same arrow, and the next thing they know, they missed their target, and then it hooks way over here. And they're like, but I moved. It should have done the thing. No, you have to move your eyes with yourself. If this was what was initially getting your ball in that same area, and you had to move right, you probably have to move your target a little bit to get that same area. So just, again, some more food for thought with adjusting. And a very common mistake I see is you're focusing too much on what's right in front of you. What we care about is what's happening further down. We care about whatever's happening at that break line or whatever depth of which that bowling ball is beginning to react. All right, let's see. Oh, yeah, this is another good one. Your physical game needs to cater to where you are playing on the lane. This is another common mistake I see with adjusting. If you're used to playing here and it's working and the ball's no longer hooking all of a sudden, or it's hooking too much, and you have to learn to play way deeper on the lane, you're probably going to have to slightly change something about your release and be confident within that change you're making. If you're someone who's used to bowling straight and you don't get your hand very far around the ball, and you then have to move over here and change your launch angle to be super far away from where the head pin is starting, you have to be able to get that ball to have enough rotation to make its way back to the pocket. If your launch angle is usually this close to the head pin, and this is the only amount of distance you have to cover, and you then make a change, and now your launch angle is like this, you then have to make your bowling ball have that much traction distance to cover. And if you don't change something physically within your release, it's probably going to look something like this. A little bit of taper at the end. You have to be able to change something physically to create those different lines that you have to create based off of how the lane is transitioning. And every single time you bowl, the transition characteristics are going to look a little differently. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it unfortunately just is not the case. Unfortunately, the bowling world is a very complicated thing, and we love to make things miserable, because why can things be easy, right, guys? That's how it's all about. So again, knowing how to cater it to that is extremely critical. All right. We've been going all over the place with a bunch of little intricacies. And again, in terms of those minute physical changes you guys have to learn to make, I can certainly discuss them here, but I would rather wait until we go into the feet to fingertips playlist so you guys know what those are. But if your ball has more tilt on it, like a video of, see if we can find a video. See if this Mo panel will talk about it. Talk to me, Mo. What you got? Here we go. So the amount of tilt, I don't want to see him talk. Actually, I think there's one that, here we go. Here's one that shows a bunch of different tilt. The amount of tilt that you have is how angled the ball is in relation to rolling end over end on the lane surface. So we're looking, this one's rolling pretty like a tire. This one's rolling a lot like a tire. It's rolling very end over end. And that one's rolling completely end over end. So tilt will change how that ball's navigating down the lane. And it's important to know how much tilt you create. The more tilt you create, the harder that bowling ball is going to have a time of seeing friction or hook less and later, which is why one ball with more tilt looked good here. And you notice the less tilt this machine puts on the ball, the sooner it wants to hook. This one almost went all the way over. Yeah, so that's kind of neat. So again, that is something that you can, if you'd like to, alter physically to change that depth of reaction you're creating. Axis rotation, I think they have one that's like that as well. Axis rotation, let's tilt again. I want axis rotation. Axis rotation is how left or right the ball is spinning out of your hand, not how angled to the side it is, but rather how left or right that bowling ball is rotating. Axis rotation. I want to see a video of one. I like that last video. That last one was cool. Maybe not. Maybe not. I was hoping we could get one. I really wish that they made more stuff like this accessible. This is kind of cool. I mean, you can kind of see the ball motion, kind of the process of precession taking place. You can see the flare. Oh, here we go. It's very fast, though. I wish it was a little slower. But you guys can see how some of them are spinning more at the pins and some of them are spinning more on their side. That one's almost rotating dead straight. And you can see just how differently that one is doing dead straight. So you guys can kind of see how, ignore this junk in the beginning, how the more you rotate the ball, see how that one's spinning way on its side? It's going to have a more aggressive back end reaction. It's going to wait longer, but it's going to turn toward the later end of the lane. Boom. The more forward it is, the more slowly, the sooner it'll want to go, but it's not going to want to. The easiest way to say this, guys, without me going into too much detail here, is the car can only turn as much as you turn the steering wheel. If you turn the steering wheel more, the car will want to turn more. If you turn the steering wheel less, the car will want to turn less. And you guys can see the more that this person's turning their steering wheel, or the more angled that bowling ball is being launched out of this machine, the more it's wanting to turn. It's pretty easy philosophy there. I just wish it was so fast. I'm gonna have to make more shorts, guys. I think that's what this is telling me. I need to make some more shorts with this kind of stuff. Because they like to hide stuff online, unfortunately. This is an old video. But it's cool though. It gets the job done. We can kind of see what's going on here. Let me see what else. Let this keep going. But again, that stuff all stems from the physical game. It all does. I mean, how tilted the bowling ball comes out of your hand and how axis rotated the ball comes out of your hand is all dependent on you as bowlers. And that is something that you can adjust. There are so many characteristics of adjustments that you can make that will have a change on what your bowling ball is doing. But again, only thing that you guys should be concerned with is my ball reacting in a similar depth on the lane? And what change can I have the most confidence and easiest time in executing within my own game? We all have strengths and weaknesses, which you guys have all heard me talk about in the Feet to Fingertips playlist. But know what your strengths are and know what of those different things. Do you have an easier time moving your feet left and right? Do you have an easier time altering your ball speed? Do you have an easier time changing the axis rotation of your ball? Whatever you have the easiest time in changing, that's going to be what works the best for you. It's going to be what works the best for you. Let me see. Do we have any more questions come in? We're clean. Guys, any more questions, guys, please ask. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. That's why we do this stuff. But yeah, I'm definitely going to have to create some new shorts for you guys, apparently, as I'm coming to realize here, so I can dissect our own videos that are of a higher quality. Let's see. Did I discuss everything I wanted to talk to you? Yep, we talked about the launch angles and making sure that it's always staying in a manner and where you're trying to project the ball down lane, right? If you change where your feet are, your launch angle will change, and you have to change how that ball is coming out of your hand accordingly, more than likely. We talked about the depth of reaction again. We talked about how oil can never appear. There can never be more oil than what you started with on a lane. It can only either be soaked up or be pushed down lane, which will change how your ball is reacting on that lane surface. We talked about understanding your physical characteristics and knowing how you can change certain things to create those adjustments that you're looking for. We talked about a bunch of different adjustments. Talked about how they all matter about the angle of entry and how your adjustments are meant to play to the angle of entry you're trying to create. We talked about playing to the ratio of whatever the oil pattern is that you're on to create the most wiggle room. We talked about the managing of the energy and understanding that process of precession and integrating it to how that ball is navigating down the lane. We talked about consistency, left and right moves, speed control, front and back, 3-6-9 rule, speed altering, the deflection and strategy behind the deflection. We talked about knowing your equipment and knowing what's optimal for what you're shooting at. We talked about all that stuff. That is awesome. We covered a bunch of super big things in a very short period of time. Now, this leads us to my last overarching comment, and I'm just going to open up the floor to any questions, feedback, or anything you guys would like to have. And that is the big question. Coach Logan, when should I change balls? When should I change balls? And what should I know to change into? Well, if you guys want to know what to change into, we talked about it earlier, and that is you have to know your equipment. You have to. And you have to know what piece you need next. Again, don't be that bowler that buys 8 drivers and putts with a driver. You need to buy different equipment. And using that ball motion chart idea I showed you guys and using that free website that lets you guys compare bowling balls and understand those RG and differentials are what allow you to bring the right equipment. So you actually have things that are meaningful to change into. And that will then paint the picture for what you need. Right? It's all coming full circle now, right? You know, if your bowling ball is reading too soon, you need a bowling ball that reads later. You know, if your ball hooks too much but reads at the right time, you need a ball that hooks in the similar time but just hooks less. Same RG, different differential. Again, guys. I love talking about this stuff because it all comes full circle at the end. Because it seems like we're jumping around a lot, but once you guys start to integrate all this stuff together, it all comes full circle. Different releases. Yes, Debbie, the different releases are in relation to the tilt and axis rotation you're creating. So again, if you're projecting the ball more toward, it depends on where you're playing the lane. And the simplest term, Debbie, the more I turn the wheel on the car, the easier time it's going to have turning. If I make a drastic adjustment with my feet or something, and I don't change anything with my release, then unless I didn't make that drastic of a change with my feet, then it's going to be very hard for my ball to recover in a manner that it needs to. Unless however you were bowling before was so not optimal, and maybe whatever change you're making is going to fit whatever it is you're trying to create, then sure. But if you're making a 15 board move left or a 15 board move right in your case, that ball is probably going to have a very difficult time bellying up and actually making it back to the pocket unless you throw it slower or whatever the case may be. So you may have to alter something in your release by turning the wheel in the car more to get that ball to respond. But again, that may not be what's best for you. Based off of, since I've seen you a handful of times, Debbie, I don't think that would be something I would suggest for your specific game. That's okay. I think for you, you have the ability to play with your speed as well as your I lost my train of thought, holy moly. Your speed's the big one that at least came to my mind. Because you certainly could throw the ball slower or faster accordingly. I know for a fact you can. And that's what I think is going to allow you to fit within your physical game. But some bowlers I do know have a much easier time either getting more up the back of the ball if they're trying to play straighter, or getting more around the ball if they're trying to play that more angular kind of shot shape. Many bowlers have that capability. I believe that's what I meant by that, Debbie. I apologize if I kind of worded it in a manner that made it not very easy to follow. But that's what I meant. Um, so where were we, guys? Yes. So changing balls. So if you guys have been watching the other series I've been posting, you guys may have tuned into that to the Between the Frames playlist. And I talk about, how bowling really is a mental game. It really is. Obviously, we love talking about the physical stuff. We love talking about all these big key changes and physical things we should change and purchase and whatever and whatever. But we don't often talk about how to think or what to think. We talk about what to think, but not how to think. And we all kind of have a different mental framework that we like to follow. Now, if we're just thinking completely logically, if you're bowling and even if you're not scoring as well as you want or whatever, but you're confident with whatever ball it is you're throwing, why would you ever change balls? Think about if those of you out there that have multiple bowling balls, think of every time that you've changed. Got it perfect. Got you, Debbie. You guys are able to clarify. Think about every time that you guys have changed bowling balls. If you're bowling and you're like, I think I'm going to change bowling balls, what's the number one reason you said you wanted to change bowling? Well, you really do. What's the number one reason you really want to change bowling balls? It's because you're not confident in that bowling ball you have in your hand right now. If you were confident in that bowling ball, you wouldn't change balls because you'd say, okay, I could alter something physically to get that ball to have the reaction I'm looking for, right? That's really what the reason that you guys are changing balls is. We all talk about, because you guys are probably thinking, oh my gosh, he's talking about depth of reaction and launch angles and playing all this stuff. I need to understand that so I know when to change balls. No, you don't. If you're throwing something and you're confident in its abilities or are confident in your ability to change something about how you're releasing it to get that depth of reaction or play to that launch angle or make you feel confident or whatever, then you would not change the bowling ball you're throwing. You wouldn't. Why would you change the bowling ball you're throwing? The only time you should change a bowling ball is in two instances. If you lack confidence in that bowling ball to otherwise play to what the lane is trying to ask you to play to, or if the other reason that you would change balls is if you yourself do not think that you can change something physically in how you're releasing that bowling ball or how you're delivering that bowling ball, whether it be speed, loft, left and right adjustments, the way you're rotating it. If you are not confident in making a change within yourself physically to make that ball create the reaction that you're looking for, that's the only other reason. But they both play off of the main reason of a lack of confidence, whether it's a lack of confidence in the bowling ball or a lack of confidence in yourself to do something to that bowling ball. It's all about confidence. That is the real reason I would only ever recommend you change balls. If you are not striking, but you're confident in that ball, then you're probably going to score still pretty well. You really are. You seriously, seriously, seriously are. I do not understand. I think that we in the coaching side of this sport overcomplicate the whole when to change ball things. I think we make it so complicated and it's so easy to, and I cannot discount anybody for making it complicated or overthinking it. But I'm telling you guys, keep things stupid, simple, simple, stupid. If I don't like what I'm seeing, I change balls. If I'm not confident in that ball, I change it. If I'm not confident in changing something to make that ball do what I want, I grab one that I think I could change enough. It's the only reason you change. I mean, if you guys are rolling a ball and it's rolling out every shot, but you're getting 9 counts and you guys are still confident in that ball, don't change it. I wouldn't see a reason to change it. I wouldn't. I personally would not. I mean, if you guys are seeing it roll out and you're now losing confidence in that ball, then change it. That's when you change it. But if a bowler who doesn't even know what rollout is sees it roll out and they like it, they're not going to change it because they don't know. Knowledge The knowledge that you guys are soaking up allows you to leverage confidence better and have a better understanding of what's going on. False confidence, although confidence is still good. Sometimes it is. I mean, we've all lost to people before who maybe bowling in a way that we may not think is optimal. But if they're confident and they walk up to the lane every time and release the bowling ball good enough, they're gonna be like, heck yeah, perfect. Sure, I'm confident. I don't care. Looks good to me. Then they're golden. So again, only reason from the Coach Logan way that I would ever see anybody changing a ball is if they lack confidence in the ball or just lack confidence in themselves to make a change to make that ball do what they want it to do. It's the only reason. And the other question, in terms of what balls you should be bringing, it all stems back to that chart. You have to know what things you own, what you're likely going to be up against, and what things you can kind of make that chart. Guys, make that chart. That's a big thing with this. Make a chart. Understand what you have. If you only have one thing, understand what you should be getting. But I like to say, if you're building an arsenal or trying to think of what to bring with you to a bowling alley, I like to call it the Goldilocks strategy. So kind of silly, but it certainly does work. So this is assuming that you have at your disposal 3 bowling balls to bring, and if you need a spare ball, then I guess you can include that as well. I always say to bring a too hot, too cold, and just right bowling ball. If we tune back to that random chart I made, kind of just on a whim, that wasn't a very pleasant sound. Let's go over here. If we tune into this chart that I've made, I've got my let's say this is my 4 bowling balls I have. Let's say a bowling ball that I like, my just right bowling ball is whichever one you like the most, whichever one you feel most confident in. Because again, you want to start off with something that you have immediate confidence in and can trust to do what you're wanting it to do. Let's say for me, that ball is this Storm Trend. That's my just right bowling ball. Okay. So I pack my just right bowling ball. Now, let's say my just right bowling ball isn't giving me the look I'm looking for. Maybe it's whether it's hooking too much or hooking too little. We'll get into that. But I'm losing confidence and I want to change bowling balls. Well, if I look at this chart, this Brunswick Rhino appears that it would have a roll sequence occur in the same exact time when my Storm Trend would be initiating into its roll, but it's overall hooking less than my Storm Trend. This Roto Grip actually has an even sooner roll and hooks still less than what my trend is. So if I'm rolling this ball, this is my just right bowling ball, and it's beginning to hook too much, I should probably pack one of these 2 balls. I should probably pack one of these 2 balls because it's going to give me a different reaction. It's whether you consider one of these to be a just cold or too hot or too cold bowling ball is however you like to depict it. But one of these would be your too cold. Well, for this case, we'll call it too cold or too hot bowling ball. It's going to give me a different reaction. And my other one would be this one, because this one is the one that's the most different. This one has the latest roll. Although the hook is similar, it's the most different. And guys, if you don't chart out your equipment, you don't know what you should be bringing because to you, you don't know what the difference between each piece of equipment is. But if you bring a bowling ball that's just right that you start with and bring a ball that's overall going to hook more and then bring another ball that's going to overall hook less, you now have options to play with based off of the problem that you're running into. I always say whichever ball hooks less or whichever one looks the least aggressive is the too cold ball, and whichever one hooks more and looks the most aggressive is the too hot bowling ball. That's how I just like to call it. But so in my case, this Storm Trend would be my just right bowling ball. This ball has overall a higher differential, so it's a higher hooking bowling ball. It has a earlier roll, so it's pretty aggressive, right? We'll say this Brunswick Rhino it hooks less overall than my Storm Trend, but hooks around the same time. This would be overall like my too cold. It's just a little bit less ball. It's a little bit less aggressive. Although it hooks at the same time, it doesn't hook as much because the differential is lower. So if this is beginning to be too much, I'll get my too cold bowling ball. The opposite is true for this phase 2. Although they have a very similar differential, this has a later roll, so it has that more aggressive kind of look. So this can be my too hot bowling ball. There you go. I now have a basic 3-ball arsenal I can bring with me. So now I actually have different clubs in my golf bag. I'm not now just playing with 3 drivers. I now have a driver, a putter, and an iron. Whatever you want to call it. Or this is my iron, this is my driver, and this is my putter. I mean, like, you got to bring different tools. This is awesome. Last 2 nights, only 1 ball bowled, 226. Thanks for your help. Awesome, Debbie. That's awesome. 226 is pretty dang good. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I like to see. Sorry, I didn't know. I didn't even see that you sent out that chat. That's awesome. Congrats, Debbie. That's sweet. I know someone else sent me a picture. I don't know if he's watching. I won't say his name because I don't like to say it unless they'll tell me to. But he just shot an 800 and I think it was an 815 series. I think he had. Let me see. Let me go on the screen and look at it. Yeah, 826 series. So congratulations to you. I'm sure you're here. So we got some honor scores flying. That's what I like to see. But again, guys, everything, all this stuff all melds together. All this information we've covered today all melds together in some facet. I know we've covered a lot, like a lot, but it all has a way of melding together. So I'm just going to very quickly tab back over into my script, my little like notes I have. I'm going to go all the way back up. I'm just going to high level, just touch on every little big thing that I've touched on today. And then I'll just keep it open. I figured we end a little early. I figured because this isn't as much as the pathway of learning was, but I'll just go through everything again. Just make sure you guys are refreshing everything. Give you guys my big takeaways, and then I'll keep the floor open for a handful of minutes. I'll just talk to some of you guys, and then we'll close up shop here. But I think this was a good seminar. I think this was a good recap of everything. And again, next week, once I do the live streams and stuff for the Feet to Fingertips and the Between the Frames playlist, I'm hoping we can have another one of these seminars, maybe even another one over the Pathway of Learning, because the Pathway of Learning one is so sweet. I think that's a very, very useful. It's the bread and butter of the channel. Remember I said it's the big tree and all these other ones with little saplings? The Pathway of Learning covers everything. It talks about basically everything I talked about, but just in less intricate detail. So let's go through everything I've got here. So again, knowing the 3 pieces of equipment that we as bowlers have at our disposal. You have bowling balls, things you can wear, and things you can apply, whether it be applying it to yourself or to your bowling ball. All things we have. Understanding your bowling ball's DNA, whichever bowling ball that you have or however many you have, understand that they're not just different looking. They do serve different purposes. You have your RG number, which dictates how soon or late that ball will initiate into that roll sequence, or in other words, how the ball's precession process speed is, or differential, or how much that bowling ball flares, or in simple terms, the overall hook potential of that bowling ball. It's important, as I said before, don't buy the same equipment twice. Diversify what your bag has, so you guys can adopt that Goldilocks strategy, like I just referred to, and understand that you have to cater what you're purchasing to you. You don't have to know every little detail, but know at least a little bit. Have at least a general concept of what you're purchasing, so you're making educated purchasing, getting the most out of your money. And better yet, cater what it is you're purchasing to your style as a bowler. If you know you're revolution dominant, and you know that you have a hard time keeping that bowling ball from hooking too much, maybe you shouldn't dive too deep in a ball that has a very, very, very high differential number, because you know that you can't roll a bowling ball like that very, very well. Again, it's about knowing yourself as a bowler. And sometimes, although it stinks, you have to kind of know what your limitations are and map out what you have and map out what you want to have. If you guys have 4 bowling balls already, map them out. And if you want to get another one, see what gap you need to fit the most, and build a arsenal, build something that's going to meld to yourself as a bowler and give you the most diversity. Coverstocks. We have the different Coverstocks. We have the 3 different reactive resin Coverstocks, which is meant to have that porous surface and those little individual microscopic sized sponges that soak up the oil. And they all change the depth of reaction of that bowling ball. Pearl being the latest, hybrid being in the middle, and solid being the soonest. You have 2 other older school, traditional different types of Coverstocks that do not have that porous surface, one of which is urethane, the other of which is plastic. This surface is meant to not soak up the oil, but rather repel it and redeposit it later on down lane. The urethane is meant to have a hook to it, as it relies on not friction that it's seeing after the cutoff of oil, but rather just repelling that oil off of itself completely and relying on mechanical friction, as I've been calling it. Or in other words, having that smooth, archy kind of look as opposed to that reactive look like all the reactive resins have. Plastic is meant to capitalize on no friction and meant to roll over the stuff it's rolled over previously by repelling it off of itself and not having much of an inside gut, or the guts, like the core of it, is not meant to be very aggressive. So it's meant to not hook at all. Very good for spare shooting. Although we cannot change the inside of the core of the bowling ball, we do have access to change the surface of the bowling ball. We can either grit it down with a sand or Avalon pad. The number in which is on those pads will change the overall grittiness, the lower number being more gritty, the higher number being less gritty. And this can change how soon our bowling ball wants to react. If we want to change our bowling ball to react later, we can either shine it up or remove that sanding that comes on that surface by getting a shiner or a cleaner. What else do we got? Keep on rolling. Hidden technology made simple, right? We talked about the concept of precession and this gyration process and the ball trying to reach equilibrium. The ball is ultimately trying to rotate around the PSA, or the preferred spin axis. Depending on what core you have will change where exactly this PSA is located. If the core is symmetrical on both sides, it will be located where you would approximately be drilling your thumb in the bowling ball, which is obviously adept to change, but depending on where you put the thumb in your bowling ball. If it is an asymmetrical bowling ball, or one side is not the same looking as the other, it will come with a mass bias, or a little dot that's actually shown on the cover of that bowling ball that you can see that shows where it's attempting to reach that equalizing status on. Your release DNA, as I've been coining it, is defined as a PAP, or a positive axis point. When you immediately launch the bowling ball out of your hand, depending on how much tilt you have on the bowling ball and how much rotation you have on the bowling ball, will define where that moment is. All of us have a different PAP. Although many of us may have similar ones, they're going to be slightly different. Where this PAP is in relation to the PSA is going to depict how that process of precession will change from that of what it is fresh out of the box. This is why layouts are a thing. This is why when you go in, you have the option to change where you put your fingers and thumb, if you choose to put a thumb in the bowling ball, because it's going to change the relation of where that PAP is to the PSA. The very common pitfall that we have within the adjusting world is rollout, which has to relate to precession, which it's equally as bad to have the ball end precession too late. If precession ends too early, that has the ball initiate into that end over end rolling sequence too soon, thus meaning it burns up too much of its energy too quickly and doesn't have that drive it needs to deflect off the pins in the correct manner to get the optimal strike we're looking for. If our bowling ball never gets into an end over end roll at all, it's going to have the opposite problem, where it's not bouncing around the pins at all and having too much continuity. We talked about a plethora of lane play concepts to include understanding that we have to keep our physical game consistent, understanding what the oil looks like, and trying our best to play to the ratio. We talked about left and right moves and how to play different zones in the lane. We talked about forward and backward moves and how these moves may be either used to alter your speed or to change how forward or back you're releasing that bowling ball in relation to the lane. We talked about changing your speed in general and how different speed will allow the ball to hook more by giving it more time on the lane, or hook less by giving it less time on the lane. We talked about this very, very old school but still useful 3-6-9 rule, where depending on where you miss, if you move 3 boards for every pin off you miss in an opposite of a certain direction, that will get you correct in a certain direction. If you miss to the right, you'll move X amount of boards to the right. If you miss to the left, you'll move X amount of boards to the left. Depending on how off you are and where you're trying to hit, you'll move 3 boards for every pin that you are off by. We talked about how the deflection and the strategy and what you're trying to change in the navigating world is depending on the angle of entry you're looking for, and how the pins don't care about how the ball gets there, but just how the bowling ball is hitting and making contact with those pins. We talked about knowing your equipment and knowing what's optimal for what it is you're shooting at, and actually changing the angle you're attacking or the angle of entry depending on what it is you're shooting at. Angle of entry is the most critical component of the adjusting characteristics. Like I said, the pins do not care. They care about what the angle of entry is and how close you're hitting on that head pin, or wherever it is you're hitting on the spares, if it's multiple pins, to where it is you're hitting based off of that angle of entry that you're attempting to play. All of your adjustments are meant to play to cater to that angle of entry you're trying to create. We know that the bowling ball can't get more energy because there is no free energy source in the world. But however, we can cause our ball to burn up too much of its energy too quickly, or not burn up enough of its energy without its time on the lane, which causes either that rollout or the never roll out at all problem we just discussed a brief moment ago. Adjustments are what are meant to create that energy management that we're looking for. Saying this again, where that ratio of that oil lies, depending on what oil pattern you're on, is where you will tend to find the most miss room. And better yet, we talked about how the oil breaks down and how there cannot be more oil on the lane than what we started out with, and how, depending on what cover stock most of your competition or whatever it is you are throwing on that lane, is going to change the breakdown characteristics accordingly, and is drastically going to change what adjustments you have to make and when. We talked about the phases of ball motion, the skid, hook, and roll phase, and how the most critical is where that bowling ball is initiating into that roll phase. Yep, saying what I said earlier. We talked about how the oil can either dry up or shove down. There can never be more oil than what we started out with. The only key element of ball motion that really matters is the depth of reaction, or how late or soon that bowling ball is reacting on the lane. Launch angles are the line and the path in which you launch that bowling ball immediately out of your hand. And obviously, since most of us are applying rotation onto the bowling ball is meant to veer off of that launch angle that you created. But understanding what launch angle you created and catering your release mechanics and other physical mechanics to that launch angle will ensure your bowling ball is getting back to the head pin in the facet in which you would like it to strike or be optimal. We talk about how, within that degree, how your physical game has to cater to how you're playing on the lane. And the only way you can keep a similar depth of reaction is relating that launch angle, either keeping it on line or closer to the outside of the lane with where it is you're trying to hit down lane. And how targeting is extremely, extremely convoluted in that you have to change your target just about every time you change where your feet are left and right, because of the fact your launch angle will be different. Last but certainly not least, we talked about when to change balls. And in the simplest terms, there's two facets in which determine when you should change a ball. Whether you lose confidence in yourself, or whether you lose confidence in your ability, in that bowling ball's ability. Whether you believe that bowling ball is not going to work, or whether you think you cannot change something about how that bowling ball is navigating to be optimal or to make it work. Those are the two reasons I would only say change a bowling ball. And in terms of what to bring with you, we talked about my Goldilocks strategy. Bring your too hot, too cold, and just right bowling ball. And you will be able to have different things you can change into based off of the problems you're running into to keep that similar depth of reaction that you're looking for. And again, you don't necessarily have to keep the depth of reaction the exact same, especially if you're changing bowling balls, but rather keeping it consistent, keeping it in a similar spot. Every bowling ball likes to respond in a certain depth on the lane, depending on what it is you're bowling on. And if you don't let it respond in the time in which it likes, it's either going to roll out or never roll out. And it's just going to not be optimal and not get you the deflection you're looking for, and you will not score well. I just recapped all of the big topics we covered today. I will keep myself online here for an extra handful of minutes. If any of you guys have any questions or anything else you guys would like to say, I don't want to close up shop too early here, obviously. But I would say this was very good. Again, I will be sure to post announcements regarding the next upcoming live streams, since we will have hopefully 2 this week. I know how much we love to do the live streams. And as always, you guys know my website is open. I believe I'm going to try my best to start it this week. Well, one thing I also have to do is apparently as we come to realize I need to make some more shorts and quick little like 10 to 15 second things you guys can watch to soak up a very quick tip. But I'm really hoping a big key integration I can have into the website which will be free as well, is I want to make tools for you guys. I want to make like a Google sheet or an Excel sheet that you guys can use to compute things, whether it be like, because there's so many metrics and so many things we can measure within bowling. I think it would be nice if I could make. I always talk about that spare tracker sheet. I want to make one of those and make a printoutable sheet for you guys. It's free. That you guys don't have to do all the digging yourselves. I want to make an Excel sheet that you guys can input scores on. I want to make an Excel sheet that you guys can track your averages and see where your problems are. I want to make a sheet that shows you that has a rev rate or a ball speed calculator on it. I want to have these tools be accessible for you guys. And I want to have it all be in one place. So I would like to try my best to start on that this week. But obviously with the live streams and with the Quick Tip Tuesday, and maybe if I can somehow find some time to squeeze in to get another series episode, which I think we might hold off on it this week just because we're already behind the live streams. I'd rather get us up to speed on those again. I think I would like to get those tools out for you guys. And again, it's just I'm always striving to improve the channel and improve what I can provide to you guys. But I'm hoping I can get a team to help on the Coach Logan channel. I'm hoping I can get some people to kind of help with some of the editing and maybe even make some of these thumbnails. I actually have some people who I've been talking to kind of help them onboard them into the team. So as I've said before, and you guys, and I told you guys in the beginning of the episode, I'll be hopefully, provided they have enough attendance, getting to go to a USBC training and up my coaching license to the next level. I can assure you guys I'm nothing short of dedicated to ensuring I can increase the quality of content, get you guys the content you guys are looking for, and continue to remain free and accessible for you guys to get you guys accurate and just overall good information. I really, really wish I could make this, I could dedicate even more time to this and do this, full time, but I promise you guys I'm doing everything I can. And I appreciate you guys for bearing with me, especially when that one week when I kept rescheduling stuff, that was a whole mess. I still feel terrible about all that, but I really, really do appreciate it, guys. It really does mean a lot. But just stay tuned to the announcements. I will keep you guys posted on any of the tools I can come out with as I'm able to produce them and everything. But other than that, please reach out. I think that's really all I got. I'm gonna rest my voice because I can sense it's about to give out pretty soon. But again, thank you all again so much for all of your time. It really, really does mean a lot. And yeah, just stay tuned to the announcements and we'll see if I can see you guys again soon. But all right, guys, you guys have a great night. I appreciate it again and take care.